Chapter 425. Su Qinghui watched him take out the two pieces of paper. At first glance, he couldn't see clearly what he was holding. But his intuition told him that it wouldn't be what he wanted to see. "Dad, you might not know." Hua Jinyao opened the two pieces of paper and spread them out in front of Su Qinghui. "Qing Sang took your hair and did a paternity test." Paternity test. Su Qinghui's eyes widened. Actually, there's no need to do it at all. Right? Hua Jinyao raised his eyebrows slightly and pushed the two pieces of paper towards Su Qinghui. Because you know very well whose child Qing Sang is. Su Qinghui didn't look at the paternity test report at all. His body was extremely stiff behind the desk, and his whole face was covered with a layer of green. "What? Aren't you going to take a look?" Hua Jinyao's body leaned forward slightly. His aura was completely unleashed, and he didn't restrain it at all. If an ordinary person faced his gaze, they would probably be the first to give the answer. But who was Su Qinghui? After a brief panic, he calmed down. He didn't even look at the two reports. "Hua Jinyao, what do you want? Are you really not going to take a look?" Hua Jinyao touched his chin. His sharp eyes stared straight at Su Qinghui's face. "Hua Jinyao." Su Qinghui had completely calmed down. "What do you want? What can I do?" "I don't want anything." Hua Jinyao stood up. He put his hands on the table, and his deep eyes didn't miss any expression on Su Qinghui's face. "I just want to ask you, when you switched the two children, did you feel guilty?" Since Su Qinghui had calmed down, he wouldn't be affected by Hua Jinyao anymore. "Are you questioning me now?" "You can think of it that way." Hua Jinyao's expression didn't change. He was questioning him, so what? "I'm really curious. For more than 20 years, you watched Li Qianxue spoil a daughter who wasn't her own, but ignore her own daughter every day. Aren't you very proud?" Su Qinghui's expression changed slightly, but only for a moment. He didn't say anything. His eyes were extremely indifferent. "Hua Jinyao, this is between me and her. It has nothing to do with you." "Yes. This is between you and Li Qianxue. But it has something to do with Qing Sang. You let her carry the name of an illegitimate daughter for so many years. You let her miss out on motherly love for so many years. You even refused to give her even a little more care and love. Su Qinghui, do you think you deserve to be a father?" Su Qinghui's expression changed again. He looked at Hua Jinyao and suddenly nodded heavily. His lips curled into a mocking smile. "Are you here to vent her anger now?" "I wouldn't dare." Hua Jinyao's voice was even more sarcastic. "No matter what, you are my father-in-law. I wouldn't dare to do anything to you." "Then what do you mean by saying all these?" Hua Jinyao stood straight. His tall body gave Su Qinghui enough pressure even though there was a desk between them. "I don't mean anything." Hua Jinyao clenched his fists, and his heart was filled with great anger. That kind of anger even made him want to beat Su Qinghui up. But he resisted. He just looked at Su Qinghui. "I just want to tell you that your secret is no longer a secret. I know it. Qing Sang knows it too." Su Qinghui didn't say a word. Hua Jinyao slightly leaned his head forward. "As long as we want, we can tell the old master and Li Qianxue at any time about Qing Sang's real identity and whose daughter she is." Su Qinghui was still silent. Before, Xiang Kaiping appeared very suddenly. Su Qing Sang knew that she wasn't Xiang Caiping's child. But none of that was as sudden as Hua Jinyao's appearance now. He really didn't think that one day, his secret would be known by others. These things can't be hidden forever. The truth will always be revealed to the world one day. I just want to know, when that day really comes, how will you deal with yourself? Su Qinghui had impulsively wanted to take revenge on Li Qianxue. He chose that path. He thought that he could hide it from the world, but all the way to today, he didn't dare to think about what he would face when Su Qingsang's identity was discovered. Now that Hu Jinyao pointed it out directly, he didn't dare to think about it at all. In the beginning, he could still imagine the result of Li Qianxue knowing the answer, and the scene of him taking revenge and laughing at Li Qianxue. But the more he thought about it, the more he didn't dare to think about it. He couldn't imagine what kind of state Li Qianxue would be when she found out about it. In the face of such a question from Hu Jinyao, he could only force himself to be calm. That's my business. It's none of your business. Hu Jinyao wasn't surprised by his attitude at all. He didn't speak again, just looked at him coldly. The atmosphere in the office was quiet, and neither of them spoke. However, in the corridor outside the office, a figure stood there for a long time, his eyes full of shock. He was about to knock on the door and enter, but at this time, he completely stopped there. As if he was frightened, he quickly ran away without thinking. He ran very fast, as if a ghost was chasing behind him. In the office, Su Qinghui's imposing manner finally weakened. He sat on the chair weakly, lowered his head, and supported his forehead with one hand. I actually didn't want to, I really didn't want to. If it was impulsive at first, he only thought about revenge. In the end, it was already out of control. The further it went, the more he didn't dare to face it. He even deliberately made himself very bad to Su Qingsang and completely ignored her. He hoped that through this action, Li Qianxue wouldn't make things difficult for Su Qingsang. He knew that if he showed Su Qingsang any concern, even if it was only a little, it would make Li Qianxue unhappy. He couldn't give Su Qingsang the status of the Li family's granddaughter-in-law, the eldest daughter of the Su family. But he could let her live a relatively peaceful life. Later, she was admitted to university and moved out. Everything was actually developing in a good direction for him. This was good. She had her own life. She was kind, optimistic, and strong. If she lived a good life, Su Qinghui could also feel less guilty. Things had developed to this point, and it was no longer something Su Qinghui could control. He closed his eyes, and everything that had happened over the years flashed through his mind like a horse lantern. His voice came through his palm. It was so low that if there weren't only the two of them in the office, Wu Jinyao almost couldn't hear it clearly. Do you want to tell Qianxue now? Wu Jinyao looked at him and had a feeling that the Su Qinghui in front of him was a pitiful person. A pitiful person who was punished by hatred and impulsiveness. But he wouldn't sympathize with him. There must be something hateful about a pitiful person. Qingsang didn't let me say it. Su Qinghui slowly raised his head and looked at Hu Jinyao in shock. He didn't believe it. He didn't believe that Su Qingsang would give up her original identity. He didn't believe it. You don't believe it, do you? I don't believe it either. Hu Jinyao's voice was very cold. Thinking of that woman who looked cold but was actually a little silly, his heart ached a little. But this is really her decision. Do you know why? Su Qinghui didn't say anything. He looked at Hu Jinyao with confusion in his eyes. Because Qingsang said. She can't hurt Xiang Kaiping. Su Qinghui's body trembled, and his face had already turned pale. She spent a few months with Xiang Kaiping and really developed a mother-daughter relationship. He didn't dare to think about what would happen if Xiang Kaiping knew that it was her own daughter who had a conflict with her. And it was her own daughter who had almost caused her to be paralyzed. How would Xiang Kaiping face Su Peixian? How would she face Li Qianxue's daughter, who was supposed to be on the opposite side of her? Su Qinghui's thin lips were tightly pursed. He stood there, his body a little stiff. You probably haven't thought about it, have you? Hua Jinyao looked at him and sighed softly in his heart. One move of yours could drive 2 women crazy. Li Qinxue couldn't accept it, but how could Xiang Kaiping accept it? You probably don't know how good Xiang Kaiping is to Qingsang, do you? Hua Jinyao looked at him indifferently. He didn't mind telling him some facts that Su Qinghui didn't know. Do you know why she met Su Peixian last time? Because she wanted to buy wool for Qingsang and knit a scarf for her. You probably don't know yet, but she not only knit sweaters and scarves for Qingsang, but also made cured meat and sausages for Qingsang. She bought the jade Buddha pendant for Qingsang because she thought that Qingsang stayed in the hospital every day, so she wanted her to wear a jade Buddha pendant to comfort her. Stop it. Su Qinghui suddenly glared at Hua Jinyao. Stop it. He lowered his head again and covered his face with his hands. Hua Jinyao couldn't see his expression, but he didn't want to stay any longer. He looked at Su Qinghui with a calm expression. If Qingsang doesn't want to say it, I won't say it. But I really want you to know. A secret can't always be a secret. One day, the secret will be exposed. I have a feeling that even if we don't say it, I'm afraid your secret can't be hidden for long. Based on Li Qinshua's misunderstanding of Su Qinghui at that time, she would definitely do something in the future. At that time, could Su Qinghui's secret really be kept? Su Qinghui still didn't raise his head. He maintained that posture. He had been covering his face with his hands, so Hua Jinyao had no way of knowing his expression at that time. Thinking about it, he felt complicated and struggled. But he didn't want to sympathize with Su Qinghui. Compared to him, Li Qinxue and Xiang Kaiping were more pitiful and innocent. Of course, the most innocent was Su Qingsang. Thinking of Su Qingsang, Hua Jinyao didn't want to see Su Qinghui again. He turned and left. In fact, no matter how pitiful Li Qinxue and Xiang Kaiping were, it had nothing to do with him. He just felt sorry for that little woman. She was too sensible and too mature, which made him feel sorry for her. As for Su Qinghui, he knew that with what he said today, Su Qinghui would probably have a hard time in the near future. Chapter 426. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao went home. Today, she had asked Sister Lu to tidy up the place. I asked Sister Lu to tidy up Mom's room. Mom will be discharged in 2 days. When the time comes, we'll bring Mom home to take care of her. Okay. Hua Jinyao agreed. I wanted to live in your villa since it's bigger. It's also convenient for Mom to move around. Sure. Whatever you say. Also, Su Qingsang found that Hua Jinyao only listened to her and didn't say anything. What's wrong? Why are you only listening to me? Do you have any objections? You decide. Hua Jinyao pulled her to his side and sat down. These are all small things. You don't have to ask me. I'm not asking you. Su Qingsang turned to look at him. What's wrong with you today? Something doesn't seem right. Hua Jinyao shook his head and said, the Lantern Festival is coming. Do you want to go back to Rong City with me to see Grandpa? Let's make some arrangements and bring Mom over. Su Qingsang bit her lip. This matter had been decided a long time ago. She was not reluctant to part with it. Sure. I'll ask my mother. Then, he asked Dr. Jiang. If he says it's okay, we'll take Mom back to Rong City. Hua Jinyao reached out and gently stroked the hair on her forehead. Let me know after you've asked the doctor. I'll arrange the rest. Yeah. Su Qingsang had nothing to worry about. He had always been efficient and more thorough than her. Xiang Kaiping would probably agree with the decision to return to Rong City. However, Hu Qingsang suddenly fell silent, and a complicated expression appeared on her face. What happened? Su Qingsang looked at him, her lips pressed into a straight line. You said before we left Lin City. Will she come back? Seeing the hesitation in her eyes, Wu Jinyao felt as if his heart had been pricked by a needle. He reached out and pulled her into his embrace, hugging her tightly. You want to see her? Su Qingsang's face was pressed against his chest, and she could smell the refreshing scent of his body. A little. If he went to Rong City, he probably wouldn't come back easily. I want to see her before I leave. Hu Jinyao didn't speak. She looked up at him and said, You don't think so? There's nothing you can't do. Hu Jinyao tightened his arms around her waist. If you really miss her that much. Even if you want to fly to the United States to see her, let alone wait for her to come back. Su Qingsang lowered her head and seemed to be thinking. Forget it. It's better not to see him. You really can't see him. No. Su Qingsang shook her head. She must be in a bad mood recently. I'd better not provoke her. The last time Li Qianxue heard that Su Qinghui was cheating, she thought he was in love with someone else. He was probably in a bad mood right now. If she appeared again, it would undoubtedly provoke Li Qianxue even more. Hu Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang. She seemed to be cold and didn't care about anyone. Actually, he was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. As long as he got close to her and familiarized himself with her, he would understand. I told you. If you want to see him, you can see him. Don't worry too much. How about this? Su Qingsang thought for a moment and said, Let's set a time to go to Rong City. If she comes back before then, I'll go see her. If she doesn't come back before then, she didn't say the rest of the sentence. If that was really the case, she and her mother were not meant to be. Hu Jinyao held her whole body in his arms, lowered his head, and kissed her cheek. His kiss was very light, like a feather falling on her cheek. Do you miss her very much? Not really. Su Qingsang shook her head with a smile. If I knew about this earlier, I'm afraid I wouldn't be as calm as I am now. But it's grown up now. And our mother is here. So I'm much calmer. Su Qingsang suddenly became serious and looked at Hu Jinyao with a serious face. Do you know? When I was young, I often saw her holding Su Peixian. Then she would talk to her in a very gentle tone. In fact, she was a very strict person outside. But she was very gentle to Su Peixian. So I thought that if I had a mother, she would be like that. Because of this, Su Qingsang kept trying to get close to Li Qianxue. But in the end, she failed. Hu Jinyao nodded and looked at her calm face. He felt that she was too calm. You still want to acknowledge her, don't you? No. Su Qingsang denied it. I don't want to acknowledge her. I just feel that if I can, I want to see her. I just want to see her. It could be considered as fulfilling a wish in his heart. Although such a thought was a little ridiculous. Don't worry. I really just want to see her. I won't acknowledge her. Since she had made up her mind, she wouldn't regret it. But before that, she still needed some time and calmness to completely let it go. Hu Jinyao didn't say anything else. He hugged her tightly. His deep eyes narrowed slightly, as if he had made a decision. Su Qingsang didn't expect that she would meet another person before she went to see Li Qianxue. Since she was going to Rong City, she had to choose some gifts for old Master Hua. And Hu Jinyao's great-uncle, who was already living in Rong City. Her two uncles and aunt had to prepare some gifts. Shi Mengwan had been shopping with Su Qingsang for a long time, and she had also been choosing gifts for a long time. Although it was said that it was good to be rich, it could be solved with money. But after listening to Su Qingsang's words, Shi Mengwan felt that there were many people in the Huo family. There are so many relatives in the Huo family. Little Qingsang, with your simple personality, can you really handle it? Even if I can't handle it, I have to. In fact, Su Qingsang was indeed most afraid of troublesome interpersonal relationships, but she met Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao is so good to me. It's only right for me to face his family for him. You have awareness. Shi Mengwan patted her shoulder heavily. But I think you don't seem to be in a good mood today. What's wrong? You want to separate from me? Can't bear to part with me? Yes, yes, yes. Su Qingsang nodded repeatedly and reached out to pinch her cheeks. You don't know how much I can't bear to part with you. Just talk, don't touch me. Shi Mengwan touched her face narcissistically. I just took care of my face yesterday. Let me see. Su Qingsang leaned over to look at her, and there was a hint of teasing in her tone. Your face is so smooth, and your skin is so good. You still have to take care of it. You're not giving us a way out. Don't be ridiculous. You don't know the suffering of the hungry. You have Hua Jinyao. But I'm still single. I have to take good care of myself and make myself look more beautiful so that I can hook up with a tall, rich, and handsome man like you, right? No need to hook up. I'll ask Hua Jinyao to introduce a few to you. How about that? Okay. Shi Mengwan nodded with a casual expression. Su Qingsang didn't believe her. Why do I feel like it's fake? You don't believe me. If you don't believe me, I'll go find one later. Come on. Find one. You find one. Su Qingsang looked around and saw a man in front of her. His back looked a little familiar. That. Good figure. His front should be good too. Aren't you looking for one? Go. 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 I'm not afraid of you. Shi Mengwan was provoked by her. She glared at her and quickly took 2 steps forward. She took out a red bill from her bag, turned around, and made a face at Su Qingsang. Then, she quickly took a few steps forward to block the handsome man in front of her. Sir, I'm sorry. Did you drop this money? The moment Shi Mengwan raised her head, her expression changed. She stood there, exuding a dejected aura. Su Qingsang sensed that something was wrong and quickly stepped forward. Mengwan, what's wrong? When she saw the man, Su Qingsang was also stunned. No wonder the handsome man in front of her looked familiar. It turned out to be Zhan Hausa. Mr. Zhan. Hello. Hello, Mrs. Hua. Zhan Hausa greeted Su Qingsang and glanced at Shi Mengwan. I'm sorry, I didn't drop this money. Really? Shi Mengwan bit her lip. She crumpled the money into a ball and held it in her palm. Then, I'll ask someone else. Okay. Zhan Hausa responded and glanced at Su Qingsang. Mrs. Hua, are you shopping? Yes. Say hello to President Hua for me when you're free. I will. Thank you. Then, I have something else to do. I'll leave now. Go ahead. Su Qingsang felt that it was very stressful to be with someone like Zhan Hausa. After he left, she turned to look at Shi Mengwan. You're so lucky. She didn't try to strike up a conversation, but the moment she did, she ran into Zhan Hausa. Lucky? Shi Mengwan smiled mockingly. I think that I'm too unlucky. If she wasn't so unlucky, how could Zhan Hausa forget her? Mengwan, I think, do you want to do something else? What? I think that you might have mistaken me for someone else. After all, you haven't seen each other for more than 10 years. Seeing the worry in Su Qingsang's eyes, Shi Mengwan pretended to be careless and waved her hand. Don't worry. I'm just saying. I've decided to give up. Really? Of course it's true. Shi Mengwan hooked her arm. Alright. Alright, let's continue shopping. Buy gifts. Hua Jinyao has so many relatives. How many gifts do you need? Let's go. Su Qingsang was actually worried about Shi Mengwan. Shi Mengwan's situation was more complicated than hers. However, she also knew that it would be difficult to persuade her at the moment. She thought about it. Why not wait until she returned to Rong City and then invite Shi Mengwan to hang out? Then, she could let Hua Jinyao introduce a few young men to her. Maybe after Shi Mengwan met a few outstanding men, she would find that there were still many good men in the world. Let's go. I remember there's a good shop in front. Let's go and have a look. Shi Mengwan pulled Su Qingsang forward. Su Qingsang couldn't help but look at her, worried that she had really let go. Unexpectedly, Shi Mengwan pulled her too fast, and Su Qingsang was too focused on her. As a result, she accidentally bumped into a person who came out of the shop. Sorry. Su Qingsang hurriedly apologized. At the same time, she took a step back. Chapter 427. When Su Yusin saw Su Qingsang, he was obviously stunned. Almost subconsciously, he took a step to her side. Su Qingsang was also a little surprised. Su Yusin's movement happened to block the girl behind him. Because of his action, Su Qingsang couldn't help but take another look at the girl, and then found that she was not the Bai Jihan from before. Su Qingsang withdrew her gaze and didn't intend to meddle. Yusin. You're here shopping too? Yes. Su Yusin nodded and looked at Su Qingsang with a somewhat complicated expression. With your girlfriend? Did he mean that Bai Jihan was a thing of the past? Thinking of the woman who aborted a child for Su Yusin, Su Qingsang's gaze was a little subtle. She's not my girlfriend. Su Yusin explained quickly, completely ignoring the somewhat embarrassed face of the girl next to him. I just happened to meet her. Su Qingsang nodded. When she came just now, she really didn't see the two of them holding hands. Then, you guys continue. Sister. Su Yusin saw that Su Qingsang was about to leave and couldn't help but call her. Su Qingsang turned her face to look at him and raised her eyebrows, as if she didn't understand why he called her. Well, Su Yusin looked at Su Qingsang with his lips crossed. He actually had a lot to ask her and a lot to say. But now, facing Su Qingsang's indifferent gaze, he couldn't say a word. After a day, he still hadn't digested the news he heard yesterday. The shocking news that made him dumbfounded. Su Peijian wasn't his sister, Su Qingsang was. When he heard the news outside Su Qinghui's door, he was completely stunned. He couldn't believe it and didn't dare to face it. He even ran away like he was escaping, but after leaving, he couldn't help but turn back. He wanted to question Su Qinghui, ask him why he did this, and why he could do this. But before he could ask clearly, he heard Hua Jinyao's words. He said that Su Qingsang didn't intend to recognize Li Qianxue at all. That news shocked him again. He couldn't understand why Su Qingsang refused to recognize them. Refused to recognize Li Qianxue. Even after he heard Hua Jinyao's explanation. She said that Su Qingsang didn't want to hurt Xiang Kaiping, but did that mean she didn't want to hurt Xiang Kaiping? However, when he calmed down and seriously considered Su Qingsang's position, he tragically found that they really didn't have the right to ask Su Qingsang to acknowledge them. Had Li Qianxue ever cared about Su Qingsang? No. Had Su Qinghui ever been nice to Su Qingsang? Not at all. Had he ever been nice to Su Qingsang since he was a kid? Still nothing. He used to dislike this sister from the bottom of his heart. He thought that as an illegitimate daughter, she brought shame to the Su family. More importantly, her existence made the feelings of discord between her parents. But in reality, she was admitted to Lin City's a university medical school at the age of 17. After he graduated, he took the postgraduate exam and was now an outstanding doctor. What about Su Peijian? He had the ability, but the things he did in the dark. He had attacked Su Qingsang over and over again. The difference in strength between the two was obvious. In the past, he could still say that Su Peijian had her own standpoint. But when he calmed down, he only felt ashamed. As an illegitimate daughter who didn't have many resources and was neglected by her parents, she worked hard enough and was ambitious enough. Putting all of this aside, Su Qingsang's attitude towards her family since she was a child was clear. Even if they weren't close, there was enough respect. He didn't like her before because Su Qingsang's existence made Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue not get along. But now he knew that Su Qingsang was his sister. His biological sister. He couldn't tell what he was feeling. Yesterday, he wanted to rush to Su Qingsang and explain things to her. But halfway through the car, he chickened out again. Yes. He chickened out. Li Qianxue went to the United States to accompany Su Peijian. For more than 20 years, Li Qianxue really loved Su Peijian as her own daughter. If Li Qianxue knew, what would she do? Su Qingsang didn't dare to think about it, and neither did Su Yusin. But was he really not going to say it? He struggled for an entire night without an answer. Early in the morning, his eyes were dark. Old Master Li could also see that he was in a bad mood, so he asked him to go out for a walk and didn't have to accompany him at home. He went out and met this female classmate next to him on the way. This female classmate's father had business dealings with the Li Corporation. Due to their friendship, when the other party asked her to help choose a gift for someone, he didn't object. He didn't expect to meet Su Qingsang. He looked at Su Qingsang and fell into a state of sluggishness. Those thousands of suppressed words seemed to be unable to be suppressed at this time. He couldn't help but want to get close to her and talk to her. What's wrong? Su Qingsang looked at Su Yusin, her younger brother, with obvious concern in her eyes. What happened? Nothing. Su Yusin didn't know what he could say. My mother went to the United States. I know. Su Qingsang's heart skipped a beat. She didn't understand why he would mention Li Qianxue. What's wrong? She might not be back so early. I know. Su Qingsang had already thought about it. She might not be able to see Li Qianxue before she left. Now that it was confirmed, she was a little disappointed, but she could accept it. But why did Su Yusin say this to her out of the blue? Could it be that he knew something? Su Yusin took a step forward. He seemed to want to clarify, but the female classmate next to him stood up at this time. Yusin, is this your sister? Isn't your sister Peijian? The girl had attended the Su family's banquet, so she naturally knew Su Peijian. However, she didn't know much about Su Qingsang. Shut up. It's none of your business. Su Yusin heard this and glared at the girl. I have 2 sisters. Can't I? The girl was shocked by Su Yusin. Her face changed a little, and she was speechless for a moment. When Su Yusin looked at Su Qingsang again, his eyes were full of apology. Sister, I'm sorry. It's okay. Su Qingsang waved her hand. If there's nothing else, let's continue shopping. You guys go ahead. Su Yusin's lips moved. He wanted to speak a few times, but in the end, he couldn't say a word. He could only watch as Su Qingsang left. The girl behind him still wanted to approach, but Su Yusin glared at her. He said, "Go shopping by yourself," and left. The girl was left there stomping her feet in anger. Qing sang, "What's wrong with this cheap brother of yours?" After they separated, Shi Mengwan whispered to Su Qing sang, "Why do I feel that he's acting weird today?" "You can see that too." Su Qing sang could see that too. However, she didn't think that Su Yusin would know that secret. After all, Hu Jinyao couldn't tell Su Yusin, let alone Su Qinghui. Yes. Shi Mengwan thought of some things that Su Qing sang had told her before. Right, he specifically mentioned his mother. Do you think he hates you and Hu Jinyao for sending Su Peijian to the United States? No way. Su Yusin wasn't that kind of person. However, Su Qing sang wasn't sure. I really don't know. You may know a person's face, but you don't know his heart. Shi Mengwan was afraid that Su Qing sang valued family too much and wouldn't even know that she was tricked in the end. I think it's better for you to keep a distance from the Su family. Su Qing sang didn't say anything. Keep a distance from the Su family. In this situation, even if she didn't want to keep a distance, she couldn't. After all, she was afraid that if she really got too close to the Su family, she might be exposed. You won't be unhappy if I say this, will you? Why would I? Su Qing sang knew that Shi Mengwan was doing this for her own good, so she wouldn't be unhappy. However, as for her own background, she suddenly didn't know how to tell Shi Mengwan. Of course, she knew that Shi Mengwan could keep a secret. However, Shi Mengwan was also on good terms with Xiang Kaiping now, and she often visited her when she was free. If Shi Mengwan found out, it would be very difficult for her to guarantee that Shi Mengwan wouldn't give herself away in front of Xiang Kaiping. Let's go. Let's continue shopping. Let's not talk about it for now. Since she had decided to treat Xiang Kaiping as her own mother, there was no need to say anything else. Okay. Let's go. Florida, America. Li Qianxue saw that Su Peijian had returned, and there was finally a little smile on her face. You're back. Yes. Compared to her, Su Peijian's expression was much worse. In the past, when she was still in Lin City, the new year was a lively time. She could play with her friends and fly everywhere. But this year, she was trapped here by Su Qinghui, and he wouldn't let her leave. He even enrolled her in some so-called advanced course. This advanced course sounded nice. It was a business management advanced course for young people. However, the people in it were people who were about the same age as her father in Su Peijian's eyes. She didn't want to go there for a day, and she couldn't wait to go back to China. Mom. Su Peijian sat down next to Li Qianxue and hooked her arm. Can't I go home? I don't want to stay here anymore. Li Qianxue didn't want her daughter to stay here either. If she could, she would take her daughter away immediately. However, she didn't want to go home now either. She felt disgusted when she thought that Su Qinghui had another woman. Didn't your father say that you should study for 3 months? But I can't stay for a month. Besides, you don't know what they're talking about, and I don't want to hear it at all. Su Peijian shook her arm and said coquettishly, Mom, just agree to go home, okay? Okay. Li Qianxue didn't speak. She really didn't want to go back, didn't want to see Su Qinghui's face. However, if she went back like this, she was afraid that Su Qinghui would quarrel with her again because of that woman. Mom. Su Peijian really felt wronged. I didn't do it on purpose. I also know that I was wrong. But Dad still won't let it go. Look, it's going to be the Lantern Festival in a few days. But I still have to spend the festival alone outside. I already said that I will accompany you. Chapter 428. Speaking of this, Li Qianxue's expression changed. In the past, even if she and Su Qinghui didn't get along on the surface, at least their family was still together. What about now? Not only did she not get along with Su Qinghui, but she also couldn't get along with him on the surface. If Su Qinghui didn't care about her, why should she care about him? You want to go home, right? Yes. I want to go home. Su Peijian saw that her mother's attitude had softened, so she quickly added fuel to the fire. Just take it that we're going back to accompany grandfather, okay? Li Qianxue was silent for a moment. If possible, she didn't want to go against Su Qinghui. For so many years, it seemed that she had the final say in everything, big and small. However, when it came down to it, she could never win against Su Qinghui. Since he dared to have a woman outside and was heartless to her, then he shouldn't blame her for being unjust. She was the one who gave birth to their daughter. Even if he didn't feel sorry for her, she would feel sorry for her. Li Qianxue patted Su Peijian's hand and made a decision. Don't go home. There are still a few days before the Lantern Festival. Let's go play for a few days before going back. Thank you, Mom. Su Peijian couldn't help but kiss Li Qianxue's cheek. Mom, you're the best. You. Li Qianxue poked Su Peijian's forehead, her eyes full of love. By the time Su Yusin arrived in the United States with the address given by Su Qinghui, Li Qianxue had already taken Su Peijian to Las Vegas. He could only fly over again. This time, Li Qianxue and Su Peijian met without a hitch. Mom. Sister. When he arrived, it was night time. Su Peijian and Li Qianxue were about to go out with their bags and coats in their hands. Where are you going? Let's go play downstairs. Su Peijian was in a bad mood and wanted to play a few rounds in the casino downstairs. Yusin, you came just in time. Do you want to join us? No. Su Yusin shook his head and looked at Li Qianxue. Mom, I have something to tell you. What is it that you can't tell me over the phone? Did you have to fly all the way to America just to tell me? Li Qianxue's hand was held by Su Peijian, so she couldn't move. She glanced at Su Yusin. He didn't look too well after flying all the way here. It seemed like he was exhausted. Have you eaten? I ate something on the plane. Not now. Li Qianxue did not miss the tiredness in her son's eyes. Even if you're not hungry, you must be tired, right? I'll go back to my room to rest first. We'll talk about it after you've rested. Mom. What I said is very important. Su Yusin took a step forward and was about to speak when he saw Su Peijian standing next to Li Qianxue. He thought for a moment and lowered his head helplessly. Forget it. I'll go and put my things down, then I'll accompany you down. Yusin, are you worried about us? Su Peijian smiled and patted her brother on the shoulder. All right. Don't worry. The security here is very good. Let me follow you. Otherwise, you're not allowed to go. Su Yusin was very insistent. He looked at Li Qianxue and said, if you don't let me follow you, I will tell Grandpa that you came to the casino to play. This time, it wasn't just Su Peijian. Li Qianxue's expression did not look too good either. Old Master Li didn't like young people to gamble. No matter what kind of entertainment it was fine to have fun, but once it was involved in gambling, it was out of the question. His health was not very good. Even Li Qianxue had to be careful. All right. I'll let you follow me. You haven't learned anything else since you grew up, but you've learned your father's way of managing people. Li Qianxue would not say anything bad about her father. If Su Yusin wanted to be like him, he would be like Su Qinghui. Yes. Brother, you're becoming more and more like Dad. Su Peijian added, not forgetting to lean in front of Li Qianxue and ask for her favor. I'm the best. I'm not like Dad at all. You're not just not like your father, you're not like me either. Li Qianxue pinched her cheek. There was no anger in her eyes, but more of a tease. I look like Grandma. Su Peijian had also seen a photo of Su Qinghui's mother. It had to be said that she really looked like her grandmother. The simple conversation between mother and daughter fell into Su Yusin's ears. He felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Yes. Su Peijian was not like her father or her mother. It was such a simple thing, but after so many years, no one paid attention to it. But Su Qingsang was different. She looked very much like Su Qinghui. To be honest, Su Qingsang and she were more like Su Qinghui's children. Yusin. Li Qianxue looked at her son in a daze and was a little worried. Are you too tired? If you are really too tired. He returned to his room to rest. Don't worry, we won't play for too long. We'll be back soon. Su Yusin stood there without moving. He nodded almost imperceptibly and carried his luggage into the room. When he came out again, he had already changed his clothes and was wearing a very decent three-piece suit. Although he was young, he often followed Su Qinghui and received an elite education, so he naturally had an imposing manner. He stood next to Li Qianxue. His tall figure gave her a sense of security. Mom, let me protect you today. Stupid Yusin, you only protect your mother and not me, right? That's right. You have a problem with that. You're so fierce, why would you need anyone to protect you? Sure. Are you itching for a beating? Su Peijian was about to attack Su Yusin as she spoke. This was originally a joke the two siblings often made in the past, but now Su Yusin was a little unable to bring it up. If it weren't for Su Qinghui's craziness, if it weren't for Su Qinghui's stubbornness, the one who did these things with him and was so close to him would only be Su Qingsang. Now it was Su Peijian. And even if one day he and Su Qingsang knew each other's identities, he was afraid that he and Su Qingsang would not be able to joke around like he did with Su Peijian. After all, the estrangement between them had been too long. It was difficult to repair the lost youth and friendship that grew up together. Li Qianxue sensitively noticed that her son's mood was not quite right today. She glanced at Su Peijian and said, "All right, your brother must be tired after coming all the way here. Don't disturb him." Unlike Su Qinghui, who only cared about Su Peijian, Li Qianxue could basically be fair to the two children. Occasionally, because Su Peijian was a girl and was her first child, she had to dote on her a little more. But in general, she still considered herself a very fair mother. As expected, Su Peijian stopped making trouble, but Su Yusin's expression was complicated. Li Qianxue loved Su Peijian so much. If he told the truth later, without much time to think, the three of them went downstairs. When they went to the magnificent hall, they saw a prosperous scene in front of them. Su Peijian liked crowds, and the scene in front of her was like a fish in water. Su Yusin had been following Li Qianxue and Su Peijian, watching them sit down in front of one dealer after another. They put down the chips, then got up and went to another. At first, she lost more than she won. Su Peijian lost a few million. She didn't take it seriously, and Li Qianxue naturally wouldn't take it seriously either. In such a place, a few million was like money. Su Yusin looked a little sad. He thought of Su Qingsang again. When she first bought that house, it was only 1 million or so. At that time, Su Peijian was not happy. She felt that Su Qinghui was too good to Su Qingsang. But in reality, all the enjoyment and fun that day should belong to Su Qingsang. Not Su Peijian. Li Qianxue didn't want to play at first. Later, seeing that her daughter lost a lot, her hands were itching to try her luck. She didn't know if it was like what ordinary people said, losing in love, but winning in gambling. In more than half an hour, Li Qianxue not only earned back the millions that her daughter lost, but also won more than 10 million. Wow! Mom, you're so lucky today. Su Peijian's eyes lit up. Mom, continue. Which one do you think is better? Go big. Li Qianxue didn't care about the money, but the feeling of winning was very good. She swept away the anger she had suffered at Su Qinghui's hands. She pushed out more than half of the chips in her hand. Go big. She turned to look at Su Peijian, but her tone was a bit persuasive. This kind of thing, just play for a while. Don't take it too seriously. This is the last round. Whether we win or lose, we go back. Okay. Listen to Mom. As Su Peijian spoke, she saw Su Yusin standing still out of the corner of her eye. She couldn't help but pat him on the shoulder. Yusin, what are you doing? You're here, but you don't play a few rounds. What? Not enough pocket money. How much do you want? I'll give it to you. I don't need your money. Li Qianxue looked at her daughter's generosity and smiled. Yusin, if you really want to play, I'll give you these chips. Mom will give these chips to you. No need. I'll just watch you play. Su Yusin glanced at the table and watched Li Qianxue put most of the chips on the big side. Mom, I think you should go small this round. Why? You've opened 7 small rounds in a row. Do you think this one is still small? It's possible. As Su Yusin spoke, he leaned over and put the chips on the small side. Anyway, it's the last round. Let's bet on this one. I'll listen to you. Li Qianxue didn't care about the money. If you win, these are all yours. Mom, you're so biased. Su Peijian pouted, but she wasn't really unhappy. 5 minutes later, Su Yusin looked at the more than 30 million he had won and shook the check in his hand at Li Qianxue. Okay, I know you're good. Li Qianxue looked at her son, her eyes full of smiles. We won money today. Tomorrow, we'll go shopping. You guys are happy. Su Peijian was very depressed. You all won money, but I lost. I'm really unlucky tonight. Although she didn't lose much, compared with Su Yusin and Li Qianxue's luck, she was much worse. Okay. I'll go back and make it up to you. Su Yusin looked at Su Peijian and thought of the secret he knew. Maybe you've been too lucky in the past 20 years. That's why I want you to change your luck. Yusin, what nonsense are you talking about? Su Peijian was suddenly unhappy, but Su Yusin was unwilling to change his words. He turned in the direction of the elevator. Mom, look at him. If Li Qianxue still couldn't see that Su Yusin was in a bad mood today, then she would have been Su Yusin's mother for so many years for nothing. Okay. Don't talk too much. The 3 of them went upstairs again. Li Qianxue asked Su Peijian to go back to her room to rest, and she followed Su Yusin back to his room. Chapter 429. What happened in Lin City? Su Yusin also wanted to ask. He wanted to know what had happened. Why was it that his family was no longer like a home? Her father loved someone else and was with her mother for revenge. The mother couldn't get what she wanted. It was a pity that she had loved someone else's daughter for so many years. His sister was his sister, but she was no longer born to the same mother as him. His sister, who was born from the same mother as him, had now become the most distant member of the Yan family. Su Yusin was only 17 or 18 years old. Even if he had been raised by old Master Li's side at an early age. She also learned a lot from Su Qinghui. But how could those business things compare to getting along with family? He sat there without saying a word, and his whole person exuded a sense of dejection. Li Qianxue was shocked by Su Yusin's reaction. She had never seen Su Yusin like this. Her eyes were full of worry. "Yusin, are you okay?" Su Yusin suddenly reached out and hugged Li Qianxue. This action stunned Li Qianxue again. Ever since her son entered primary school, he had never been this close to her. The only thing Li Qianxue could think of was that something must have happened at home. "Yusin, what happened at home? Tell me honestly." Su Yusin's voice was hoarse. He hugged Li Qianxue tightly. He was actually the same as Su Qingsang. He didn't dare to imagine Li Qianxue's reaction when she found out everything. It was hard to say, "Yusin." Li Qianxue was even more worried about her son. Without thinking, she went to call Su Peixian. "If you don't tell me, I'll call your sister." "Mom." Su Yusin grabbed Li Qianxue. "Don't go yet." Li Qianxue looked at her son, her face full of confusion. "What's wrong with you? Tell me." Su Yusin's lips were pressed into a straight line, and he looked very serious. When he put on such an expression, he looked very much like Su Qinghui. Li Qianxue frowned. "Is it your father? What happened to your dad?" "Mom." Su Yusin looked up at Li Qianxue. Do you know that dad, he..." "Tell me. What happened to your dad?" No matter how angry she was, Su Qinghui was the man she had loved for so many years. She grabbed Su Yusin's arm and said, "Tell me. What happened to your dad?" "Dad, he..." Su Yusin didn't know what to say. He looked at Li Qianxue and thought about her endurance. If Dad did something wrong to you, sorry about me." "What are you referring to?" Li Qianxue's heart was beating very, very fast. Caring about Su Qinghui had almost become an instinct. It had been more than 20 years. Even if she didn't want to, she couldn't help but care about him. "She's my sister." "I was talking about Su Qingsang." Su Yusin carefully looked at Li Qianxue's expression. He kept thinking in his heart, about my sister, Su Qingsang. "Do you know that she's actually, Li Qianxue's expression was a little strange. She stood up straight and stared at Su Yusin's face. "Now even you know." Su Yusin looked up at Li Qianxue, as if he didn't quite understand that Li Qianxue already knew. "Mom, Of course I know." Thinking of 7, Li Qianxue only felt a fire burning in her heart. "Why do you think I came to the United States?" Su Yusin stood up and said, "Mom. Mom, you actually know." Li Qianxue's expression was ugly, but Su Yusin couldn't sit still anymore. "Mom, since you know, why did you still treat sister like that?" "What did I do?" Li Qianxue looked at Su Yusin and couldn't believe that he was actually speaking up for Su Qingsang. "How did I treat her? What do you want me to do to her? Don't you want to acknowledge her? Don't you want to treat her better?" Su Yusin's eyes widened. He thought of the relationship between Li Qianxue and Su Peixian. Could it be that Li Qianxue really didn't mind? "I'm good to her." Li Qianxue looked at her son as if she was looking at a madman. She didn't understand what Su Yusin meant by acknowledging her. "Su Yusin, are you my son? You actually want me to be good to the daughter of another woman and your father?" Li Qianxue's heart began to hurt at this moment. Su Qinghui had lied to her and hurt her, and now even her own son was siding with someone else. She only felt that her breath was stuck in her throat. She stared at Su Yusin as if she was looking at her own enemy. Su Yusin suddenly realized that Li Qianxue was not talking about the same thing as him at all. "Mom, what are you thinking? How did sister become the child of another woman?" Sister, she is you at all, Su Yusin. With a bang, the door opened. Su Peijian stood at the door and glared at Su Yusin. What the hell is wrong with you? She quickly entered the door and raised her hand to point at Su Yusin. You flew all the way to the United States just to speak up for another woman's child? Have you ever thought about how I feel? The words that Su Yusin wanted to say were interrupted because of Su Peijian's sudden appearance. He looked at Su Peijian and thought of the sibling relationship between the two of them for more than 10 years. He suddenly couldn't say the rest of the words. Su Peijian looked angry. Looking at Su Yusin's ugly face and then looking at Li Qianxue's hurt face, she was furious. Yusin, are you mom's son or not? Are you kidding me? What kind of attitude are you using to talk to mom? Have you been bewitched by a ghost? How dare you speak up for Su Qingsang? Do you know that she is not even that woman's child? She doesn't even know where the bastard came from. You actually quarreled with mom because of her, shut up. Who are you calling a bastard? Su Yusin couldn't help but interrupt Su Peijian. She is also dad's daughter. She is also mom's daughter. With a slap, Li Qianxue raised her hand and slapped Su Yusin hard in the face. This was the first time she hit Su Yusin. The numbness from the slap made her take a few steps back. She looked at her palm and then at Su Yusin. There were tears in her eyes, but they didn't fall. She swallowed and thought about how she had been begging for more than 20 years but couldn't get it. She thought about how Su Qinghui used her love to hurt her again and again. She thought about many things, one by one. But all of them added up couldn't compare to the pain caused to her by her son standing on Su Qingsang's side and against her. Mom. Su Peijian took a few steps forward and held Li Qianxue immediately. She glared at Su Yusin. Su Yusin, are you satisfied? Do you want me to die of anger before you're satisfied? Su Yusin's face was burning. He didn't even bother to raise his hand to cover it. He looked at Li Qianxue and couldn't say the rest of the words. Mom. I just don't want you to regret it. I regret it now. Li Qianxue actually regretted it a long time ago. But she was a proud person. She was so proud that even if she knew she had gone the wrong way, she was unwilling to look back. Her body trembled a little. She stared at Su Yusin blankly, only feeling that there was a fire burning in her heart, burning her to the point where she lost all reason. I regretted it a long time ago. She regretted marrying Su Qinghui. She regretted not leaving in time when she found out that he had no hope of falling in love with her. How many years had been missed by her just like that? She had always been a proud daughter of heaven. She had been held in the palm of someone's hand. In the end, for Su Qinghui, she retreated again and again and endured again and again. Peijian, let's go. She didn't want to see her son for the time being. She turned to leave, stumbling a little. Mom. Su Yusin took a step forward. He couldn't let Li Qianxue leave just like that. Do you know what you have missed all these years? Do you know that in fact, Dad, he... Enough. Li Qianxue closed her eyes. If you still think of me as your mother, don't say any more. I don't want to listen to you now. Su Yusin watched the door open and close in front of him. His whole person became more and more dejected. He took a few steps back and sat on the bed weakly. His whole person was filled with confusion. He was in a daze in the room for a long time. He didn't know how much time had passed. He abruptly stood up and quickly walked outside. Su Peijian was already asleep. He entered her room and looked at her deeply. She was his half-sister. He should turn around and leave, but he couldn't. He thought of the news he had received. Before the Lantern Festival, Su Qingsang would go to Rong City with Hua Jinyao. It was only a few days before the Lantern Festival. If Su Qingsang really went to Rong City, Li Qianxue would know, but she would also lose her daughter. Her real daughter. He took a few steps forward and walked to the bedside. He bent down and gently pulled out a strand of Su Peijian's hair. Holding the hair tightly, he turned around and walked to Li Qianxue's room. Li Qianxue had booked a presidential suite with a total of 3 rooms. He walked in and found that Li Qianxue was still awake. "Mom." Li Qianxue sat on the sofa in front of the French window. Hearing his voice, she didn't turn her head. "You still know that I am your mother?" "Of course I know." Su Yusin took a few steps forward. He squeezed Su Peijian's hair tightly in his palm and walked to Li Qianxue. "Mom, I'm sorry. My attitude wasn't very good today." Li Qianxue didn't speak. Her heart was broken. At first, it was her husband, and then it was her son. She felt that she had a hard life. She often thought that it might be because her previous life had been too smooth. That was why she couldn't get what she wanted for the rest of her life. "Mom, why aren't you sleeping?" Su Yusin's eyes were filled with pity. But he knew very well that if some things were not said, he was afraid that Li Qianxue would suffer even more in the future. "Go to sleep." "I can't sleep." Her life was a failure. Her husband didn't love her, and her son opposed her. Li Qianxue wanted to cry, but she was used to being dominant. She didn't even know how to cry now. Su Yusin stood in front of her. He looked at his mother's long hair. Chapter 430. What are you trying to say? Li Qianxue still didn't turn around. Her voice was a little hoarse, and it sounded a little suppressed. "If you want to speak up for Su Qingsang, you don't have to." For so many years, she had not made a move against her, and that was already her greatest tolerance. If he still wanted her to treat Su Qingsang well, like her own daughter, she couldn't do it. She wasn't the Virgin Mary. "Mom, I'm not trying to defend her. I just want to ask you, do you trust me? What are you trying to say?" Li Qianxue finally turned around. She looked at Su Yusin, not understanding what he meant. Su Yusin reached out and placed his hand on Li Qianxue's shoulder. "Mom, there are some things that I know you won't believe even if I tell you. So, I decided to skip the process." As he spoke, he pulled out a strand of hair from Li Qianxue's head. "Su Yusin, what are you doing?" Li Qianxue's scalp hurt. She couldn't help but glare at Su Yusin. "What the hell do you want?" "Nothing." Su Yusin squeezed the 2 strands of hair in his palm. He stood up and said, "Mom, have a good rest. I'm going out for a while. It's so late." "Where are you going?" "Mom." Su Yusin took 2 steps back and looked at Li Qianxue. There was obvious pity in his eyes. He knew that when the result came out, Li Qianxue might be the first person who couldn't take it anymore. She might even break down and go crazy. But he was more afraid that Li Qianxue would find out too late. He was afraid that by the time she found out, it would already be too late to make up for it. With Li Qianxue's personality, she would not be able to take it. "I have something to do, don't worry. I know what I'm doing." "Unfortunately, you don't know." Li Qianxue watched her son walk out. Her scalp no longer hurt. She looked at her hair and then at the direction in which Su Yusin had left. What was Su Yusin trying to do? Because of this incident, Li Qianxue and Su Peijian were not in the mood to have fun the next day. The 2 of them wandered around the neighborhood and finally decided to book plane tickets to go home. Before leaving, Li Qianxue called Su Yusin. He hadn't been seen since he left last night. Now that they were going home, they wanted to ask him if he wanted to go with them. Su Yusin's call did not go through. Li Qianxue frowned. Su Peijian took the phone from her hand. I think he's already gone back to his country. This Yusin, he used to be quite sensible. Who would have thought that the things I've been doing recently are getting more and more out of line? Li Qianxue didn't say anything. It was rare for her not to respond to Su Peijian. Ever since Su Yusin pulled out a strand of her hair last night, she had had a strange feeling. Her intuition told her that something was about to happen, and it was related to her. But she couldn't think of what it could be. Mom. Su Peijian hooked her arm. Let's just book 3 tickets. Since Wu Jinyao had arranged everything, she had nothing to worry about. Her face was calm, but there was some hesitation in her eyes. Wu Jinyao took her hand and pulled her into his arms. I heard that Su Yusin also went to the United States. Really? That was good. The family of 3 went to have fun together. Do you want to go? If she wanted to go, he could arrange for someone to send Xiang Kaiping back to Rong City first. He would take Su Qingsang to the United States to see Li Qianxue alone. No need. What can I do if I go? Su Qingsang looked up and sighed softly. If she didn't know, she would be happier. Indeed. Wu Jinyao also admitted this. That is if your father decides to give up revenge. He won't expose that cruel truth after so many years. Su Qingsang didn't look good. She wrapped her arms around Wu Jinyao's waist and rubbed her face against his. He won't, will he? I don't know. He wasn't Su Qinghui. He couldn't guarantee his future. But he could feel that Su Qinghui already regretted it. Su Qingsang didn't say anything. She hoped not. If Su Qinghui gave up revenge, then her choice today would be meaningful. If Su Qinghui didn't give up revenge, then her revenge today would be meaningless. I don't want to. Su Qingsang looked up at him. I already have the best husband in the world and the best mother in the world. Right? Yes. Wu Jinyao nodded and kissed her gently on the lips. Wu Jinyao. Su Qingsang leaned over to look at him. You will always be by my side, won't you? Of course. Wu Jinyao pressed his chin against the top of her head. I will always, always be by your side. Su Qingsang smiled with satisfaction. Her little face pressed against Wu Jinyao's chest and listened to his heartbeat. She felt that this was good. In order to make her daughter happy, Li Qianxue finally let go of her heart and followed Su Peijian to shop and go shopping. The mother and daughter swept through the pile of trophies. As a result, the suitcases they brought were all full. They bought 2 more suitcases, but it was still too little. Su Yusin came back at this time. He was holding a file bag in his hand. Seeing that Su Peijian was there, he calmly and casually put the file into his suitcase. Yusin, you came at the right time. We have too much luggage. Can your suitcase still fit? Yes. Su Yusin came in a hurry this time and didn't bring many clothes. He helped Su Peijian and Li Qianxue pack their luggage. They found that it was just right. The 3 of them had 6 suitcases. Su Yusin didn't speak. His silence was a little strange. Li Qianxue saw that her son was not right and decided to have a good talk with him when they returned to China. On the 13th of January, Li Qianxue and the other 2 took the plane yesterday afternoon. The plane landed this morning. Returning to Lin City, Su Peijian was a little nervous. Sitting in the car that Su Yusin arranged to pick her up, she looked at Li Qianxue nervously. Mom, will Dad be angry if he knows that I'm back? I don't care if he's angry or not. Li Qianxue had seen through Su Qinghui now. He didn't care about her, so why should she care about him? But Su Peijian wanted to say something. Although she knew that Su Qinghui loved her, she also knew that he had some principles. Sister, Su Yusin suddenly said lightly, why don't you go to a hotel for 2 days first? Or you can live in your apartment in the city. Let's go home first and see what Dad says. If he's not angry, you can go home. Yusin. Li Qianxue glanced at her son. She always felt that her son's arrangement was strange. Just go home directly. I'll see what your father dares to say with your grandfather around. Mom. Su Yusin's voice was faint. Let me go to the United States. Grandpa also supports it. Li Qianxue didn't say anything. Her face was a little ugly as she looked at Su Peijian. She didn't look good either. She pouted and looked at Su Yusin unhappily. But in the end, she was still afraid that Su Qinghui would be unhappy, so she went back to the apartment under her name. After Su Yusin sent her away, he followed Li Qianxue into the car. He raised the glass in the middle. Only the mother and son were left in the back of the car. Su Yusin took out the document from the suitcase and put it in front of Li Qianxue. Mom, look at this. What is this? Li Qianxue looked at the document that was all in English and didn't reach out to take it. Chapter 431. Su Yusin looked at Li Qianxue expressionlessly. Only he knew how fast his heart was beating. How intense. In his eyes, there was a faint anticipation, as well as a reckless madness. Before he went to the United States, he had thought that maybe Hu Jinyao was talking nonsense. Maybe the kids weren't switched at all. He even wanted to find the paternity test report that Hu Jinyao had mentioned. But he couldn't find it. Unable to find it, he had doubts, disbelief, and anticipation in his heart. In fact, he knew better than anyone else that exposing Su Qingsang's identity would hurt Li Qianxue the most, not anyone else. When he did the DNA test for Li Qianxue and Su Peijian, he wondered if he was wrong. Was Hu Jinyao wrong? Could Su Qingsang be wrong? But now, he knew that only one person was at fault. Su Qinghui. Everything started with him. As Su Qinghui's son, he had to make up for his mistake. He wanted to get everything back on track. Paternity test. Whose? Li Qianxue looked at the report, and she had a bad feeling. You'll follow me. Su Yusin's voice was very soft. When I was in the United States, I took your and my sister's hair and did a paternity test. Li Qianxue's expression suddenly changed. Su Yusin, what do you mean? Su Peijian was her biological daughter, and now Su Yusin was doing a paternity test for her and Su Peijian. Was he crazy? Mom. Don't worry. Take a look first. I'll tell you what I mean after you're done. I don't want to see it. Li Qianxue's intuition told her that it was not something good. She refused to look at it. Mom. Are you sure? Are you sure you don't want to watch it? Su Yusin pushed the report a little closer. His gaze was firm as he stared straight at Li Qianxue's face. Li Qianxue thought about how Su Yusin had asked Su Peijian to leave as soon as he returned to Lin City. She also thought about how he had gone to the United States on purpose and how he had said those inexplicable things to her. She stared at him with wide eyes and slowly took the test results from him. She didn't rush to open it, but stared at Su Yusin in front of her. Su Yusin. What do you know? Tell me. Mom, you'd better finish reading first, then listen to me. Su Yusin tried his best to control it, but his voice still trembled. Who would have guessed? Who would have thought that Su Qinghui would do such a thing? Li Qianxue pulled out the report. She kept staring at Su Yusin's face. When the thin piece of paper was pulled out, she lowered her head and her gaze fell on the appraisal report. The appraisal report was done in America, and it was all in English. But for Li Qianxue, none of that was a problem. Her eyes were fixed on the English letters, almost as if she wanted to separate each letter and then reassemble it. But no matter how he disassembled it, no matter how he combined it, content that wouldn't change would never change. Li Qianxue and Su Peixian did not conform to the laws of inheritance, 100% ruled out as mother-daughter relationship. She squeezed the piece of paper tightly and looked up at Su Yusin. What did you do? What did you do? Su Yusin felt as if a huge stone was pressing down on his heart. He reached out and held Li Qianxue's hand tightly. Mom, you shouldn't ask me what I did. You should ask, what did my father do? Li Qianxue was a smart person. She squeezed Su Yusin's hand tightly. She was so hard that she almost pinched her nails into his flesh. What do you mean? What did your father do? Where's my daughter? Peixian isn't my daughter. Then what about my daughter? Where was the daughter she had given birth to after 10 months of pregnancy? If it wasn't for Su Peixian, where would she be now? Her eyes were red. Su Yusin couldn't bear it. He turned his face away. Mom, you've been watching over her all this time. Make it clear, Su Yusin. Su Yusin. Li Qianxue's hand tightened. Su Yusin was in pain, but he didn't pull her hand away. He closed his eyes and suppressed the urge to cry. He turned to look at Li Qianxue and said word by word. Mom. Don't you understand yet? You've been watching over her all this time. She's been living at home. Li Qianxue's hand loosened. Su Yusin's words pointed everything to a very terrible fact. He seemed to have said it the day he went to the United States. She heard it, but she didn't take it to heart. Now, Su Yusin had once again brought this matter to the table. Her faint woman's sixth sense allowed her to guess at this time. But she refused such speculation. She wanted to ask clearly. She wanted to be sure of the final answer. She bit her lips so hard that it almost bled. There was no longer a trace of elegance on her well-maintained face. There was only shock, disbelief, and rejection. Su Yusin. Make it clear. What do you want to say? What do you want to say? Say it. Mom. Su Yusin chuckled. There was mockery, helplessness, bitterness, pity, and sympathy in that smile. Why do you still have to deceive yourself? You're so smart. You've already guessed it, haven't you? Impossible. Li Qianxue closed her eyes. In the blink of an eye, many images and many things flashed through her mind. She didn't believe it. How could she believe it? Su Yusin didn't give her a chance. He held her shoulders and stared at her face, his eyes full of sympathy. Mom. 25 years ago, the child you gave birth to was replaced by your father. He took that woman's child back and treated it as your child. And your child was taken away by him. I don't know what happened later, but in the end, he still took the child back and raised it in the Su family. But that child was no longer the granddaughter of the Li family. She was no longer the daughter of the Su family. That child became the illegitimate daughter of the Su family. It was Su Qingsang. Li Qianxue's face was so pale that there was no trace of blood. Her whole body froze there, sluggish and unable to move. Su Yusin couldn't bear to continue, but he had to continue. Mom. Su Qingsang is your daughter. She's my sister, my biological sister. Mom. It's all true. Hua Ji now found out about his sister's background and went to his father to question him. I just heard it. Mom. Did you hear it clearly? Su Qingsang is your daughter. Su Peijian, she is, Su Yusin couldn't bear to say more. Once some things were uncovered, only the true ugliness would be revealed. He knew the result, but he had no choice but to uncover that piece of cloth. Li Qianxue had been listening to Su Yusin. Su Yusin was afraid that she wouldn't believe him, so he repeated what Hu Jinyao had said to Su Qinghui. Mom. The facts were clear. I know this may be hard for you. But the truth is, stop the car. Stop the car. Li Qianxue suddenly moved. She even forgot that the car was still moving and reached out to pull the door. Su Yusin quickly stopped her. Mom, what are you doing? I'm going to find Su Qinghui. I'm going to see Su Qinghui. Mom, stop the car. I'm going to find him. I'm going to find him and ask him. Li Qianxue's eyes were a little blank and empty. There was also disbelief and shock. She didn't believe it. She didn't want to believe a single word. Mom. It's no use looking for him. He won't admit it. Hu Jinyao had put all the evidence in front of Su Qinghui. Did he admit it? Not at all. He would never admit it. Because this was his revenge. How could he admit to Li Qianxue that he had done something wrong? Li Qianxue stopped moving and leaned back in the chair weakly. She felt a sharp pain in her heart. Someone was holding a knife and stabbing her heart again and again. She couldn't stand the pain anymore. She sat up and could hardly sit still. It hurt. It really hurt. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe a single word. Her voice was soft and trembling. Mom. Whether you believe it or not, it's the truth. Su Qingsang is your daughter. She's my sister. Su Yusin reached out and held her. His eyes were firm. Mom, I've already asked the driver to go to my sister's house. She's my sister. We're going to take her home. Li Qianxue lowered her head again. Su Yusin felt hot tears fall on the back of his hand. The temperature almost burned him. He could still feel Li Qianxue trembling. She had suffered a blow. He knew. But such a blow would come sooner or later. If he hadn't heard the conversation between Su Qinghui and Hu Jinyao, he could pretend that nothing had happened. If he hadn't done a paternity test for Su Peijian and Li Qianxue, he could pretend that nothing had happened. But he couldn't. He couldn't just turn a blind eye to it. He couldn't let Su Qinghui keep deceiving them. More importantly, he couldn't still treat Su Qingsang as an illegitimate daughter, knowing that she was his biological sister. After Li Qianxue's heart ached, her head felt like it was about to explode. Countless images and conversations flashed through her mind. Her argument with Su Qinghui. That day, Su Qinghui kept saying that he didn't have other women. He was a proud man. She knew that. So when he said that he didn't have other women, she didn't believe him at the time. She only thought that he was making excuses for himself. Now, after listening to Su Yusin's words, she understood everything. Su Qinghui didn't have other women. He really didn't betray her. He didn't have a third woman. But what he did hurt her more than the fact that he had a woman outside. Her heart began to hurt again. Li Qianxue was in so much pain that her whole body was trembling. She leaned weakly on Su Yusin's shoulder. Mom, calm down. Su Yusin held her and didn't let her break down like this. Calm down. We still have to pick up my sister. Li Qianxue shook her head gently. Her eyes were blurred by tears. She couldn't see clearly, and she couldn't see clearly. She couldn't control her body's reaction. It was like she couldn't control her heartache. Chapter 432. How could he, using all her strength, she could only squeeze out these few words. She was in so much pain that she almost fainted. Her fingernails dug into her palms and almost bled. How could he? How could he? How could he? She murmured, each word heavier than the last. In the end, she almost shouted, how could he? Mom! Su Yusin saw that her hand was bleeding. He hurriedly tried to grab her hand, but found that he couldn't. Mom, don't be like this. Su Yusin was frightened by Li Qinxue. Calm down. Don't be like this. Li Qinxue was in extreme pain. She only saw a white light in front of her. Su Yusin was frightened and watched her go into shock. Mom. Mom, he regretted it. He shouldn't have said, Mom. Li Qinxue woke up slowly. She felt as if all the strength in her body had been drained. Her palm was still bleeding, but she couldn't care less. She grabbed Su Yusin's collar and asked, where is she? You said to take me to her. Where is she? We'll be there soon. Su Yusin took a tissue and wiped the blood off her palm. Mom, calm down. You'll scare my sister. According to Hu Jinyao, Su Qingsang might have known about it long ago, but she obviously didn't intend to acknowledge them. Li Qinxue closed her eyes. She wanted to calm down, but there was no way. How could he calm down? Who could remain calm? Li Qinxue thought of the last time she met Su Qingsang, when she went to the Su family to pay New Year's greetings. She recalled how she had gone to the hospital to avenge Su Peixian. At that time, she almost hit her. The last time they were together was such an unpleasant scene. Ah, Li Qinxue screamed. It was too unbearable. It was really unbearable. Her daughter. That was her daughter. She thought of Su Qingsang smiling and giving her a small gift, and the obvious flattery and weakness in her eyes. However, he had asked his assistant to throw the gift away. She couldn't think of any warm scenes between her and Su Qingsang. Not at all. Ah, the more he thought about it, the more painful it became. Li Qinxue held her head, completely unable to vent the waves of overly excited emotions in her heart. Mom. Calm down. Su Yusin's impression of Li Qinxue had always been elegant and noble. He had never seen Li Qinxue like this. Calm down, you'll scare my sister like this. Li Qinxue finally calmed down a little after hearing Su Yusin's words. She slowly raised her head and looked at him. Do you think we should go and see her now? Yes. Let's go see her now. Su Yusin gave her an affirmative look. He had already arranged it. Today, he was going to take Li Qinxue to see Su Qingsang. We'll be there soon. We'll be able to see my sister soon. Mom, calm down. Otherwise, you'll scare my sister. Although Su Qingsang might not be scared at all. But he had to calm Li Qinxue down. Li Qinxue blinked. She had finally received a message from her son. She hastily wiped her face and said, all right. His mind was in a mess and was in a mess. She couldn't think at all. She just wanted to see Su Qingsang as soon as possible. The car stopped downstairs of Su Qingsang's apartment while they were talking. Su Yusin got out of the car first, but Li Qinxue didn't even have the courage to get out. It was a long flight of more than 10 hours. From abroad to Lin City. She should have been exhausted, but now she only wanted to see her daughter as soon as possible. Su Qingsang, who was originally her daughter but had been ignored by her for more than 20 years. Li Qinxue almost couldn't stand steadily when she got out of the car. It took a lot of effort to stabilize her body. Su Yusin had been holding her and was very worried about her condition. Mom. Do you want to go back first? Li Qianxue was so excited now. He was afraid that she would lose control of her emotions later. If he remembered correctly, Su Qingsang was still with Xiang Kaiping. Li Qianxue naturally knew what he knew. She knew that Xiang Kaiping had returned and that Xiang Kaiping had mistaken Su Qingsang as her daughter and recognized her. I'm fine. Those things didn't matter. No matter who came, she would go and bring Su Qingsang back to the Su family today. Su Yusin also knew that he couldn't stop Li Qianxue from going up today, and he didn't think about stopping her. The two of them went upstairs together. Su Yusin glanced at Li Qianxue and knocked on the door first. There was no response. Su Yusin pressed the doorbell again. Still no one answered. His eyebrows twitched, and he took out his phone to call Su Qingsang. Today was the weekend, and he thought she would be at home. He was on the phone, and Li Qianxue looked at him nervously. Her eyes were full of nervousness and confusion. Sister. Where are you? As soon as the phone was connected, Su Yusin couldn't wait to speak. His tone was a little anxious. Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao had already boarded the plane. 2 nurses and a doctor were putting a cushion behind Xiang Kaiping. Su Qingsang had just said goodbye to Shi Mengwan, who had come to see her off. Shi Mengwan was no longer surprised by Hu Jinyao's wealth. She said that she must pick a time to go to Rong City and make money from Hu Jinyao. Okay. You are welcome to come anytime. I'm just afraid that you won't come. Don't worry. With a rich young lady like you in Rong City, I will definitely come for money. Shi Mengwan held her hand. I'm just afraid that you won't find me annoying when the time comes. Don't worry. Auntie wants you to come. Xiang Kaiping really liked Shi Mengwan. This girl's personality was too good. Okay. Auntie. I will come when the time comes. They chatted and laughed. It was almost time to leave. Shi Mengwan left. A group of people escorted Xiang Kaiping to the plane. Su Qingsang was about to ask Hu Jinyao when the plane would take off. Her cell phone rang. Yusin. Su Qingsang was a little surprised. She didn't quite understand why Su Yusin suddenly called her. I am at the airport. I am going back to Rong City. What? Su Yusin's eyes widened. He couldn't help but look at Li Qianxue. You are going back to Rong City with Hu Jinyao? Yes. Su Qingsang nodded. What's the matter? Sister. You. Su Yusin still wanted to say something, but Li Qianxue had already snatched his phone away. Su Qingsang, come back here. Su Qingsang suddenly heard Li Qianxue's voice. Her hand trembled, and the phone almost fell. She didn't expect to suddenly hear Li Qianxue's voice. Holding onto her phone, she stood there in a daze, unable to move. Qingsang. Come back. Li Qianxue didn't hear her response. She didn't know if Su Qingsang knew. She only knew that she wanted to see her daughter now. Now, immediately. Come back. Su Qingsang blinked, as if she had finally found her voice. She wanted to call her aunt like she used to, but she couldn't. Qingsang, come back. Li Qianxue seemed to realize that she was too emotional. She softened her voice a little. I am your mother. I am your mother. Just one sentence, and Li Qianxue couldn't stop crying. She leaned against Su Yusin weakly and grabbed his arm tightly, using this action to soothe her emotions that were about to go out of control. Come back. I am your mother. I am your mother. Su Qingsang's hands began to tremble. She knew. She actually knew. Chapter 433. Su Qingsang sat there in a daze. Hua Jinyao's face was magnified in front of her, and she could barely hold the phone in her hand. On the other end of the phone, Li Qianxue didn't hear her voice. She was a little anxious. Qingsang, don't go. I'll wait for you here. Come back quickly. Come back now. Hua Jinyao couldn't hear the voice on the other end of the phone, but he knew it was Su Yusin calling her. He looked at her and moved his lips silently. What's wrong? Come back. Li Qianxue's voice was still ringing in his ears. It was filled with eagerness and anticipation. Qingsang, what's wrong? Xiang Kaiping also noticed that something was wrong with Su Qingsang. She knew Su Yusin. He was Su Qinghui's youngest son. Why was he looking for Su Qingsang? Did something happen to the Su family? Su Qingsang's lips moved. She received a message from the control tower. Tell their captain to prepare for takeoff. The stewardess used a rather sweet voice to remind them to fasten their seatbelts and return to their seats in preparation for takeoff. Su Qingsang blinked, looked at Hua Jinyao, and then looked at Xiang Kaiping. It was hard for her to make a choice. She had never faced such a difficult moment in her life. Her lips were pressed into a straight line. The palm holding the phone tightened, and her body trembled slightly. She almost wanted to rush out of the plane and find Li Qianxue. Qingsang. It's fine if you don't come back. You stay at the airport and don't move. Mommy will come and pick you up now. Li Qianxue's voice rang out again. Su Qingsang blinked and felt like crying. On the other side, Xiang Kaiping could no longer sit still. She remembered to come and see her. She looked at Xiang Kaiping and thought of Li Qianxue. His heart was in turmoil. How should she choose? If she stayed and reconciled with Li Qianxue, she would definitely hurt Xiang Kaiping. She had already been hurt by Su Qinghui, and now Li Qianxue's daughter had to stab her in the back again. If you don't stay, leave. She would hurt Li Qianxue's heart. She had been raising other men's women for more than 20 years. Now she wanted to recognize herself. But she had misgivings. Qingsang, did you hear me? Li Qianxue was still calling her. Su Qingsang could hear the sobs in her voice. At the same time, Xiang Kaiping was already sitting in front of her. She looked at her, her gentle eyes full of worry. Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Caiping's worried eyes and closed them. I'm sorry. She heard herself say the words in a very soft voice. Then he hung up. Qingsang. Xiang Kaiping looked worried. Are you okay? I'm fine. Su Qingsang smiled stiffly. I'm fine. Qingsang. Xiang Kaiping did not believe it at all. Su Qingsang forced herself to smile. I'm really fine. Yusin blamed me for not telling him before I left. She's throwing a tantrum. Xiang Kaiping stopped talking. She could feel that Su Qingsang was very close to her brother. To be honest, she did not have a good impression of the Su family. No matter which one it was. How could Su Qingsang not know that? She patted Xiang Kaiping on the shoulder. Mom, you should rest. Just take a nap and we'll be there. Su Qingsang's voice was slightly disguised. Xiang Kaiping didn't think much of it. She thought that she didn't want to upset her, so she didn't mention Su Yusin. She returned to her seat and sat down. Xiao Ning and Xiao Yu sat on her left and right, chatting with her. Hua Jinyao sat next to Su Qingsang. He held her hand and found that her hand was as cold as ice. Are you okay? His voice was very soft. Su Qingsang glanced at him, moved her lips, and only said 4 words. She didn't make a sound, but Hu Jinyao saw it clearly. She said that she was back. Who was she? Li Qianxue. Su Qingsang hugged him, her face pressed tightly against his chest. Her voice was very soft. She knows. She knows. She wants me to stay. Her voice was full of struggle. Hu Jinyao tightened his arms around her waist. You refused her. What else? Su Qingsang looked up at him. Her voice was very soft, but there were tears in the corners of her eyes. What about her? She was referring to Xiang Kaiping. Hu Jinyao looked into her eyes and couldn't answer her question. Xiang Kaiping and Su Qingsang had been together for a few months, and they had developed a mother-daughter relationship. Su Qingsang didn't want to hurt Xiang Kaiping, so she hung up the phone in a hurry. But her action would definitely hurt Li Qianxue. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang's voice was very soft, so soft that Hu Jinyao could only hear it clearly with his lips pressed against hers. I heard her. What should I do? I heard her. She refused to stay. She didn't get off the plane. She didn't dare to think about Li Qianxue's feelings. She wanted to cry, but she couldn't even cry now, because if she cried, it would arouse Xiang Caiping's suspicion. Hu Jinyao hugged her tightly, and the flight attendant was still reminding them of the precautions before takeoff. Hu Jinyao wrapped his arms around Su Qingsang's body and felt her trembling in his arms. Her eyes were full of struggle, and her heart was full of struggle. If she hadn't misunderstood that Xiang Kaiping was her mother, if she hadn't been with Xiang Kaiping for a few months, at this time, she would have rushed off the plane without a care. Hu Jinyao didn't need to look at Su Qingsang's eyes to feel her current state. He glanced in Xiang Caiping's direction. She was chatting with 2 nurses. From time to time, she glanced in their direction. When they saw Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang hugging each other, there were faint smiles and teasing in their eyes. In Xiang Caiping's opinion, her daughter and son-in-law had a good relationship. That made her happier than anything else. But only Hu Jinyao knew that Su Qingsang, whose body was covered by him, was trembling at this moment. She didn't cry, nor did she shed tears. But seeing Su Qingsang like this made his heart ache even more. He couldn't blame her for making the wrong choice. No matter which side she chose, she would hurt the other side. If it was Hu Jinyao. He didn't know how to choose. He turned his eyes and gave Yang Wencheng, who was behind him, a look. Yang Wencheng got up. Hu Jinyao wrapped his arms around Su Qingsang's and pressed her body tightly into his arms. With his other hand, he took out his phone and typed a line of words. His movements were very light, and his hand was placed behind Su Qingsang, so Su Qingsang didn't see it. Yang Wencheng, however, saw it clearly. Yang Wencheng looked at him with a shocked expression. After getting an affirmative answer from him, he quietly got up and walked to the front. Hu Jinyao still had his arms around Su Qingsang's waist. He gently patted her back and said, "If you want to go back, we'll stop." "No," Su Qingsang said in a very low voice. Her breath brushed against Hu Jinyao's face. "No." "Why not?" "You can go back if you want." Su Qingsang bit her lip and tightened her arms around Hu Jinyao's waist. "What about her? What about Grandpa? You've already told them that we're going back." She had never been willful since she was a child. She felt that she didn't have the right to be willful. She was used to suppressing herself and restraining herself. Even at a moment like this. Most importantly, she really didn't want to hurt Xiang Kaiping. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very sorry to inform you that there's a small problem with the plane. We need to repair the plane now. The specific flight time will be arranged by the mechanic. Hearing this, Su Qingsang suddenly widened her eyes. She looked up at Hu Jinyao, and he was also looking at her. Su Qingsang bit her lip hard and said, "This." Hu Jinyao put his arms around her waist, turned his face, and gently kissed her on the forehead. "You see, God has made a choice for you. Go and see her." Xiang Kaiping was also stunned. She didn't expect the plane to break down. Jinyao. Why did the plane break down? How long will it take? I don't know. Why don't we go back and rest first? Hu Jinyao looked at the time. This place is very close to the villa I bought for Qingsang. Mom, why don't we go there and rest for a while? Okay. Only then did Xiang Kaiping realize that Su Qingsang had been snuggling in Hu Jinyao's arms. Child, get off the plane first. You can hug her as you like when we get home. It's okay. I like her like this. Hu Jinyao put his arms around Su Qingsang's waist tightly and looked at Xiang Kaiping. Look, I'll ask Wen Chang to take you back first. Qingsang and I will talk to the airport staff and see when the next flight will be. Okay. Xiang Kaiping didn't think too much. Yang Wenchang took her, Xiao Ning, and Xiao Yu off the plane. Su Qingsang even showed her face when she left and waved at her nonchalantly. When Xiang Caiping's figure disappeared in front of her, she grabbed Hu Jinyao's arm and said, "Hu Jinyao. Let's go. I'll take you." Su Qingsang's heart was beating fast. She wanted to see Li Qinxue. But, I'm a little scared. Hu Jinyao looked at her and couldn't help but lean over and plant a kiss on her cheek. Don't be scared. I'll go with you. Su Qingsang's heart was still beating fast, but Hu Jinyao's eyes calmed her down. Let's go. She wanted to see Li Qinxue. She really, really wanted to. Li Qinxue, who was at the door of Su Qingsang's apartment, had already fallen to the ground. Mom. Su Yusin was anxious and quickly helped her up. Mom, get up. What did sister say? Did she come back? Li Qinxue didn't move. She clenched her phone tightly, her face full of tears. She didn't come back. She left. Mom. Su Yusin was stunned. He thought that Su Qingsang would be very happy to recognize Li Qinxue. I know. She won't come back. She won't recognize me either. Li Qinxue's face was full of despair. Su Yusin wanted to help her up, but he couldn't. She hates me. I know. I know it all. She didn't treat her well at all. Su Qingsang deserved to hate her. She won't. Sister won't. Su Yusin believed that Su Qingsang wasn't that kind of person. He reached out and pulled Li Qinxue up. Mom. Don't be like this. Let's go find her. Isn't she going to Rong City? We'll go to Rong City too. Let's go find her now. Li Qinxue stood up. Her legs were still a little weak. She shook her head. It's useless. It's useless. She won't recognize me. Chapter 434. Li Qinxue thought of the time when Su Qingsang was in trouble before. She even secretly played some tricks. She wanted Su Qingsang to leave Lin City. She couldn't even think about it. Just thinking about it made her go crazy. She hates me. She hates me. Mom. Su Yusin was about to cry. He hugged Li Qinxue. Don't be like this. Let's go find her now. I believe she will recognize you. Li Qianxue didn't listen at all. She really couldn't find a reason for Su Qingsang to forgive her. If she were Su Qingsang, she probably wouldn't acknowledge such a mother, would she? Mom. Let's go. Su Yusin took her to the elevator. Li Qianxue suddenly waved his hand away. Suddenly she stood up. Her cold and elegant face was full of determination. Su Yusin was startled by her actions. Mom. What are you, Yusin? We are going to Rome City. I'm going to look for your sister. Li Qianxue took a deep breath to calm herself down. All right. Let's go now. But. Li Qianxue's voice turned cold, and her eyes were full of hatred. Before we go to Rome City, we have to go home first. Mom. Su Yusin looked at her expression and seemed to know what she was going to do. Let's go. After all, Li Qianxue was someone who had been through a lot. She had already calmed down. She wanted to find her daughter, but before that, she didn't want to let go of the culprit who caused her and her daughter to not know each other. Even if that person was the man she had loved for more than 20 years. This time, she would not let it go just like that. Old Master Li looked at Su Qinghui in front of him and then at the chessboard between them. What's wrong with Qinghui today? He seemed absent-minded. This isn't your style, is it? Su Qinghui looked up at the old man, and then his eyes fell on the chessboard. Only then did he realize that he had placed 2 pieces in the wrong place. It's nothing. Picking up the third chess piece, Su Qinghui suppressed the uneasiness in his heart. He had a feeling that something bad was going to happen. Old Master Li watched him place a chess piece and followed suit. He didn't rush to land on the chessboard. Instead, he looked at Su Qinghui. Qianxue has been in the United States for many days. Now, Yusin was going to accompany her. It's the new year, and the house is cold and empty. There are only the 2 of us. Su Qinghui had nothing to say. In the past, Li Qianxue wouldn't lose her temper with him for long. But this time, because of Su Peixian, he had been upset until now. Your wife and children have run away. Why didn't you call them back? Putting down the chess piece, Old Master Li's voice sounded gentle, but there was a hint of accusation in it. Su Qinghui bit his lip and felt a little guilty. Since Qianxue wants to go out to play, let her play for a few days before coming back. Old Master Li didn't say anything. Su Qinghui had lost the game. Looks like you're not in the mood to play chess with me today. Old Master Li looked at Su Qinghui inside. He was about to ask someone to come in and collect the chessboard. The door of the house was pushed open forcefully. As the cold wind blew in, the old man glanced at the door. Li Qianxue stood there with Su Yusin by her side. Both of them didn't look too good. You're back. Old Master Li was still very happy to see his daughter. Why didn't you tell me? I could have sent someone to pick you up. You're back. Su Qinghui saw Li Qianxue and stood up. He looked at Su Yusin and said, Yusin, why didn't you tell me before you went to the United States? Li Qianxue walked toward Su Qinghui step by step. Su Qinghui was stunned by the look in her eyes. Su Yusin's footsteps moved, but he stood there and didn't move. Li Qianxue stared at Su Qinghui. Her hands hanging by her side were tightly clenched into fists. Her palm, which had been bleeding from her pinch before, was bleeding again. Old Master Li and Su Qinghui both looked at her face. Only Su Yusin saw the blood dripping from Li Qianxue's palm. Mom, he called out to Li Qianxue. But Li Qianxue turned a deaf ear. She had already walked in front of Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui had never seen Li Qianxue like this. His heart was beating a little fast, and he felt a little uneasy. Qianxue. You. Pa. A slap on the face. It landed heavily on Su Qinghui's face. Li Qianxue's palm was bleeding. With this slap, Su Qinghui's face was also stained with blood. This slap was hard and hard, even harder than when she misunderstood that he had a woman. Su Qinghui was stunned. Li Qianxue, you, with another slap, Li Qianxue slapped him for the second time. Her anger was so great that her whole body was trembling. Her palms were numb because of these two slaps, but she didn't think it was enough. When she raised her hand and was about to slap him for the third time, Old Master Li stood up. Qianxue, what are you doing? Li Qianxue panted heavily. Her palms hurt, and her heart hurt even more. She couldn't breathe when she thought of Su Qingsang's apology when she hung up the phone. When she thought of how she had ignored Su Qingsang for so many years, she felt as if her heart had been stabbed by a knife. Her hand was still in midair. Looking at Su Qinghui's bloody face, she clenched and loosened her fists, loosened and clenched them again. In the end, she put her hand down bit by bit. She stared at Su Qinghui and spoke word by word in an extremely slow tone. Su Qinghui. Let's get a divorce. Su Qinghui's face was still burning with pain. Because of Li Qianxue's words, his expression was momentarily stunned. Su Qinghui. Let's get a divorce. Li Qianxue said it again. When she said those 4 words, she could feel that her whole body was relaxed. It was as if she had thrown away a burden that had been weighing on her for many years. She stared at Su Qinghui's face and spoke very slowly, but quite firmly. Su Qinghui, this time, no matter who says it. I'm going to divorce you. Qianxue. Old Master Li looked at his daughter. He finally saw that his daughter's palm was actually bleeding. He quickly walked in front of Li Qianxue. What's wrong with you? What happened? Li Qianxue didn't answer his question. She just stared at Su Qinghui, firmly and closely staring at this man. This man she had loved and begged for more than 20 years. She wanted to firmly remember how cruel, heartless, and vicious this man was. Qianxue. What happened? Old Master Li couldn't get an answer from his daughter, so he went to see Su Yusin. Su Yusin had already entered the door. When he saw the doubt in Old Master Li's eyes, he didn't say a word. Qianxue. Old Master Li remembered that Li Qianxue had gone to the United States to see Su Peixian. Could it be that something had happened to Su Peixian? Li Qianxue was in no mood to see her father at this time. At this time, there was only Su Qinghui in her eyes. Su Qinghui looked at Li Qianxue. His faint premonition had come true. When he met Li Qianxue's gaze, he suddenly realized one thing. Li Qianxue was going to give up on him. She didn't want him anymore. This realization made Su Qinghui panic. He didn't even have the time to ask what made Li Qianxue like this. Qianxue. You're not calm now. We'll talk when you calm down. Su Qinghui. I hate you. Li Qianxue interrupted him. She looked at him, and the little things between the two of them over the years flashed through her mind. I really hate you. I have never hated you as much as I do now. She really hated him. Do you know how much I hate you? If I had a knife in my hand, I swear that I would kill you right now without hesitation. Her voice was a little hoarse. She was too tired after the long journey. After a long flight, she found out that the daughter she had raised for more than 20 years was not her own. But now, her own daughter didn't want her anymore and left. Li Qianxue was able to hold on until now without going crazy or breaking down because Su Yusin had been with her. It was because she still held on to a glimmer of faith. She still wanted to see her real, biological daughter. Those thoughts supported her and kept her from collapsing. But at this time, those emotions urgently needed an outlet. I really, really want to kill you. Cut into pieces. Li Qianxue's words stunned Su Qinghui again. He looked at Li Qianxue, and a possibility flashed through his mind. You, Li Qianxue, did she know? But how could it be? The panic in his heart grew. Su Qinghui didn't know how to react at this time. Su Qinghui. I can forgive you if you don't love me. I can forgive you if you hurt me. But you shouldn't have lied to me. Not only had she lied to him. What Su Qinghui had done. It had gone far beyond the scope of the word lie. Old Master Li looked at Li Qianxue and sensitively felt that something seemed to be wrong. Qianxue, what on earth is going on? What happened? He knew how much his daughter loved Su Qinghui. For more than 20 years, the couple had treated each other with respect on the surface, but he more or less knew what was going on inside. He had always disliked Su Qinghui treating his daughter like this. But he always thought that they were married anyway. As time passed, Su Qinghui would slowly see the good in his daughter. In recent years, the relationship between his son-in-law and daughter seemed to have warmed up a lot. But now listening to his daughter, it seemed that it was not the case at all. Li Qianxue closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she still couldn't suppress the rolling emotions in her chest. You know. How could it be? Su Qinghui suddenly looked at Su Yusin. What on earth was going on? How did Li Qianxue know? Li Qianxue sneered. Her smile was cold. Do you think you can hide it from everyone for a lifetime? Do you think you can lie for a lifetime? Su Qinghui, in your dreams. Old Master Li looked at Li Qianxue, then at Su Qinghui, and finally back at his daughter. What on earth is going on? Tell me clearly. Li Qianxue sneered. She stretched out her hand and pointed at Su Qinghui. Ask him, Dad. You can ask this good son-in-law of yours. What did he do? Old Master Li's sharp eyes fell on Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui's legs were a little weak. He almost couldn't sit still. Chapter 435. He was shocked and looked at Li Qianxue in disbelief. He couldn't understand why she would know. Qianxue. You really know. Don't call me that. Li Qianxue pretended to be fierce. What? Do you think your secret will always be a secret? Do you think no one will know what you have done? Do you think you can play with me for the rest of my life? Really? I didn't. His impulse had led to this result. Su Qinghui had long regretted it. He really regretted it. But the more he regretted it, the more he couldn't say it. The more he regretted it, the more he wanted to hide it. He knew that he couldn't get Li Qianxue's forgiveness, so he just wanted to hide it until the end. Old Master Li couldn't stand it. They all knew what had happened, but he didn't. All of you, tell me clearly. What exactly happened? Li Qianxue sneered. Su Qinghui dared to do it, but she didn't dare to say it. She closed her eyes for a moment. It was only then that she remembered. In this family, apart from her, the person who loved Su Peijian the most was Old Master Li. Thinking of this, she hated Su Qinghui even more. She couldn't wait to drink his blood and eat his flesh. Tell me, Su Qinghui. Tell Dad all about the good things you've done. Su Qinghui lowered his head and almost didn't dare to meet the father and daughter's eyes. He looked guilty. It was obvious that something was wrong. Old Master Li suddenly turned to look at Su Yusin. Yusin. What is going on? Tell me. Su Yusin was about to speak when his cell phone rang. It was Su Qingsang. Sister. Yusin, where are you? It's me. Su Yusin's call made Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue look at him. Especially Li Qianxue. Is that Qingsang calling? Is it? Su Yusin nodded and pressed the speaker button. Sister, I am at home. You. I'm coming. Wait for me. I'll be right there. Su Qingsang had just arrived home and found that Su Yusin and Li Qianxue were not there. She panicked. She thought that Li Qianxue and Su Yusin had left. It wasn't until now that Su Qingsang was willing to admit that she really missed Li Qianxue. Don't worry, maybe your mother is looking for you. Hua Jinyao took out her phone as he spoke. Call Su Yusin and ask him where they are. Now that Su Yusin said that he was at home, she couldn't help but want to confirm again. Which house are you at? The Su family. Really? Alright, I'll be right there. Tell Mom to wait for me. Su Qingsang didn't have time to say anything else. She hung up the phone and ran towards the elevator. Hua Jinyao held her hand and hugged her gently when he saw her anxious expression. Don't worry. Don't panic. She's right there. She won't leave. Su Qingsang didn't say anything but kept nodding. Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang suddenly raised her hand and grabbed the front of his shirt. I'm very nervous. What should I do? Hua Jinyao stroked her face with his hand, and there was obvious love in his eyes. Don't be nervous. Believe me, she's more nervous than you are. Ha! Su Qingsang was stunned. Hua Jinyao put his hand on her shoulder to give her strength and confidence. Trust me, she's really more nervous than you are. So you can't be nervous now. You have to calm down. Otherwise, you'll scare her. Okay. I'm not nervous. Su Qingsang thought so, but she still couldn't help it. Her breathing became a little heavy. Hua Jinyao saw this and lowered his head to kiss her. He sealed her feelings with a kiss and kissed away her nervousness. Su Qingsang's heartbeat slowly calmed down in his kiss. The elevator arrived. Su Qingsang buried her face in his chest and gently rubbed against it. Thank you, Hua Jinyao. You're welcome. I took advantage of you too. Hearing this, Su Qingsang couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. This guy was really, let's go. Let's go see her. Okay. Su Qingsang calmed herself down. She only wanted to see Li Qianxue now. As for Xiang Kaiping and the Hua family in Rome City, she couldn't care less about them at this time. What did you say? Li Qianxue rushed in front of Su Yusin. Say it again. Mom. Sister didn't get on the plane. She's coming over now. Li Qianxue's body froze. She pressed her hand to her heart. It was beating very hard. She's really coming over now. Li Qianxue couldn't believe it. Wasn't Su Qingsang on the plane? Yes. She's coming over now. Su Yusin stepped forward and put his hand on Li Qianxue's shoulder. Mom, calm down. Sister doesn't hate you. Look, isn't she coming to see you now? Li Qianxue couldn't say anything. She could only keep nodding. Old Master Li looked at the mother and son who were hugging each other in front of him, and then looked at Su Qinghui, who had his head down and looked as if he had suffered a blow. What the hell is going on? Who can tell me? He looked at Su Yusin. Yusin, you tell me. What the hell is going on? Sister is coming. Su Peijian. Isn't she in the United States? She's back in China. When did this happen? Su Yusin glanced at Li Qianxue. She was still very emotional at this time. She glanced at Su Qinghui coldly. When she met Su Yusin's gaze, she spoke quite calmly. Tell your grandfather. He'll know sooner or later. Su Chenghui closed his eyes weakly. He couldn't face the next situation. That was what he had been running away from, but in the end, he found that he couldn't escape at all. Su Yusin glanced at Su Chenghui. His lips were pursed into a straight line. He was silent for nearly a minute and looked at Old Master Li. In fact, this matter was quite difficult to talk about. Only now did Su Yusin realize that it was far more difficult to talk about this matter to Li Qianxue than to Old Master Li. Grandfather, you're getting old. No matter what you'll hear later. Please take care of your health. I'm an old bag of bones. Why can't I hold on? Just tell me, what's the matter? Su Yusin glanced at him and turned to get the medicine that Old Master Li often used. Su Chenghui didn't speak during the process. It wasn't until he saw Su Yusin take the medicine that he finally moved. He walked in front of Old Master Li, his shoulders drooping. Dad. Let me say it. Because of his actions, Li Qianxue curled the corners of her mouth, revealing an extremely mocking smile. Su Yusin had already walked in front of Old Master Li and prepared the medicine in his hand. Su Chenghui closed his eyes. He turned his head and glanced at Li Qianxue. She stood there, her features as bright and beautiful as ever. A long-distance flight of more than 10 hours, plus the shock of knowing that Su Peijian wasn't her biological daughter. It made her look a little disheveled at this moment, losing her usual elegance. She curled the corners of her lips and looked at him mockingly. That gaze made his heart sting. His lips moved towards her. He had thousands of words to say, but at this moment, he couldn't say a word. He turned his face and faced Old Master Li again. His head was still lowered. 25 years ago. The day Qianxue gave birth. Dad, you happened to be away. Qianxue was in a coma due to dystocia. Li Qianxue slept for a day and a night. Many things happened in that one day and one night. Xiang Kaiping also gave birth. Coincidentally, she also gave birth to a daughter. He was possessed and did something unforgivable. A moment of impulse led to a long period of regret. But the more he regretted, the more he couldn't reveal it. The more he regretted, the more he couldn't reveal a trace of it. Li Qianxue had heard it from Su Yusin once. But when she heard with her own ears that her husband, the man she loved, had schemed against her like this, she was so angry that her whole body trembled. She could only constantly adjust her breathing to calm herself down. Old Master Li was already stunned. His body was trembling with anger, but he could only cover the position of his heart. Grandpa. Take care of yourself. Su Yusin immediately stepped forward and supported Old Master Li. Do you want to take a quick-acting heart reliever first? Old Master Li waved his hand and looked at Su Chenghui in front of him. He was holding a cane in his hand. He suddenly pushed Su Yusin away and raised the cane in his hand. It hit Su Chenghui's shoulder heavily. Su Chenghui's body was hit by such a blow, and he knelt down. But he didn't get up. Old Master Li raised the cane to hit him a second time. Su Chenghui didn't dodge, and took the blow. When Old Master Li was about to hit him for the third time, he staggered and was about to fall back. Grandpa. Dad. Su Yusin and Li Qianxue stepped forward at the same time to support him and prevent him from falling. Old Master Li pointed at Su Chenghui. He gasped but couldn't say a word. You said 2 words, but you couldn't say a third one. Old Master Li covered the position of his heart, looking as if he couldn't bear it. Su Yusin was anxious. He quickly took the medicine and stuffed it into Old Master Li's mouth. Li Qianxue kept patting his chest. Dad, calm down. Grandpa, take care of yourself. Old Master Li pointed at Su Chenghui with a trembling hand. He wanted to scold someone, but he couldn't find the words. Grandpa. Su Yusin's face was full of worry. Li Qianxue was too angry, but she was the calmest one among them. She patted old Master Li's back to calm him down. Dad. This thing has happened now. We should think about how to make up for it in the future. Old Master Li spent a lot of effort and finally calmed down a little. He looked at Li Qianxue, his eyes full of guilt. I hurt you, I hurt my granddaughter. I should have stopped you from marrying him back then. I should have stopped you. Dad. Li Qianxue wanted to cry. She pinched herself hard and shook her head. Let's not talk about it, okay? We won't talk about the past. We'll think about what to do in the future. Can we? We'll think about how to be good to Qingsang in the future. Can we? Old Master Li was a man of experience. He nodded and accepted his daughter's suggestion. Okay. I'll listen to you. He could listen to his daughter, but he really couldn't take it. Divorce. I support your divorce. Qianxue. This time, I won't stop you. Chapter 436. It's not up to you. Old Master Li was furious. The shares of the company, everything in this family. I won't give you a single cent. You will leave the family with nothing. He was furious. In the past, he was satisfied with this son-in-law, but now he hated Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui knew that this matter would not be so easy. He had already made all the preparations. But those preparations did not include divorce. Dad. Qianxue. This is my fault. I admit that I was too young and impulsive. You can punish me however you want. But I will never divorce Qianxue. Don't even think about it. I will kick you out of the Li family. Get out of here. Get out of here now. Old Master Li was full of energy. As he spoke, he did not forget to hit the ground with his cane. Compared with Old Master Li's agitation, Li Qianxue was much calmer. She patted her father's hand and turned to face Su Qinghui. If I don't divorce, will I let you continue to torture me? Su Qinghui looked at her and his lips moved. He wanted to say that he did not mean to torture her, but he could not say that. Li Qianxue sneered, and her voice was as cold as the 12th moon. Su Qinghui, for so many years, you have used my love to torture and humiliate me. I have endured it because I love you. But now I don't want to endure it anymore. Let me tell you, I want a divorce. Su Qinghui looked anxious. He stood up and wanted to pull Li Qianxue's hand. Qianxue, I don't want a divorce. I can promise you anything else. Go away. Get out of here. I don't want to see you. Li Qianxue waved his hand away. Although Old Master Li was old, Su Qinghui had been hit twice on the shoulder. Although Old Master Li was old, he had been training hard, and the strength of his hand was not light at all. Now that Li Qianxue waved his hand, he took 2 steps back. The movement was too big, and his shoulder was in pain. But now he couldn't care less. Qianxue. Su Qinghui. Li Qianxue looked at him as if she understood his concerns. Don't worry. Although you are heartless to me, I will not be unjust to you. All these years, you have also contributed to the Su family. I won't really let you leave with nothing. You can go to a lawyer now and write down the terms of the divorce. As long as it wasn't too much. I'll agree. Qianxue, that's not what I meant. I don't care what you mean. I don't care. I don't want to know. I want you to leave this place right now, leave the Li family. Qianxue. Su Qinghui was really anxious. He could give up money, the Li Corporation, and everything related to the Li Corporation. But he couldn't get a divorce. He absolutely couldn't. Get out. Su Qinghui, let me tell you, I don't want to see you. Now, in the future, I never want to see you again. Qianxue, I was wrong. It's all my fault. I beg you, give me another chance, okay? Get lost. You want me to give you another chance after what you've done? You can forget about it. She looked at Su Qingsang and thought that this was her daughter. She hadn't accompanied or taken care of her daughter for a day. Her emotions, which had always been calm, suddenly lost control. Her eyes were blurred by tears. She stood there, and her footsteps were heavy. Su Qingsang saw her eyes turn red, and her eyes turned red as well. She stood at the door, timid, her eyes expectant and yearning. She wanted to be close, but she wasn't used to it. That expression pierced Li Qianxue's heart. She rushed over and held Su Qingsang in her arms. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Su Qingsang's eyes became wet. She was hugged by Li Qianxue and didn't dare to move at all. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. How could she fall asleep? How could she not take a look at her child at the first moment? How could she let Su Qinghui take Su Qingsang away? For more than 20 years, her child was by her side, but she didn't know her. The heartache that she had suppressed just now came back again. Li Qianxue only felt that her heart was about to break. Qingsang. I'm so sorry. Su Qingsang finally had a reaction. She shook her head gently in Li Qianxue's arms and said, No. No, you're not sorry. Even though she wasn't close to the Su family, she had to admit that Li Qianxue didn't make things difficult for her. Qingsang. Hearing her words, Li Qianxue was even sadder. Qingsang, you're my daughter. You're actually my daughter. I didn't know. I didn't know at all. It's been so many years. She stepped back a little and held Su Qingsang's face with both hands. For so many years, you've been by my side. I watched you grow up, but I didn't know that you were my daughter. I'm really confused. Su Qingsang also wanted to cry because of him. She shook her head hard, and her tears fell uncontrollably. No. I don't blame you. I really don't blame you. It wasn't her fault. It was Su Qinghui's fault. Su Yusin and old Master Li were behind them. They watched the mother and daughter hug each other and cry. No one said a word. Su Qinghui stood there and stared blankly at the mother and daughter reuniting in front of him. He had been conflicted and in pain, but at this moment, he let out a long sigh of relief. Finally, everything returned to the original track. Finally, everything went back to square one. But was it really back to square one? He knew very well that some things had changed a long time ago. It wouldn't change just because Su Qingsang recognized Li Qianxue. For example, he lost Li Qianxue. He lost her last tolerance for him. And her love. He only had Li Qianxue's hatred now. Once this realization came to him, Su Qinghui almost couldn't stand. His expression became more and more confused. Why? Why did things turn out like this? Hua Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang's tears. He rarely saw her cry. The tears that flowed down her cheeks were as hot oil. Unexpectedly, he didn't stop Su Qingsang and Li Qianxue from reuniting. This was her identity, this was her family. You really don't blame me. Li Qianxue looked at Su Qingsang's face. Her face was full of disbelief. You should blame me. You should blame me. Su Qingsang had too many reasons to blame her. Any one of them could be a reason for her to blame herself. No, I really don't blame you. Really. Su Qingsang wiped the tears on her face. Seeing Li Qianxue like this, she couldn't bear to see her like this. Unlike the sympathy and gratitude she felt for Xiang Kaiping, she had a desire to be close to Li Qianxue from the bottom of her heart. She had this feeling for many years. However, at that time, she was still young. Because of the situation at that time, she suppressed this desire again and again. Now, she didn't have to suppress that desire. She could be close to her without any scruples. Li Qianxue looked at her with a pained expression. Qingsang, if you really don't blame me, can you call me Mom? There were still tears in her eyes. She looked at Su Qingsang expectantly and nervously. Su Qingsang's heart ached a little because of her reaction. She raised her hand to wipe her tears. Her movements were very gentle. Her nose was sore, and her eyes were dry. A lot of emotions sniffled and said softly, Mommy. Li Qianxue cried again. Call me again. Chapter 437. Mom. Su Qingsang seemed to know what Li Qianxue was thinking and called her again. Yes. Li Qianxue hugged Su Qingsang again. My daughter. My daughter. Li Qianxue hugged her tightly. She changed very tightly, but her slender body had great strength at this time. Su Qingsang was almost out of breath in her arms, but she didn't push her away. She didn't even have the thought of pushing her away. Her hands were hanging by her side. Her fingertips moved, and then dropped again. However, when Li Qianxue tightened her arms again, she raised them again and gently wrapped them around Li Qianxue's waist. Everyone was looking at Li Qianxue. Only Hu Jinyao noticed her movements. His heart trembled. He took a step in the direction of Su Qingsang and Su Qingsang, but then stopped. Qingsang, Li Qianxue was so uncomfortable that she couldn't say a word now. She could only hug Su Qingsang tightly. She had never taken care of or accompanied her daughter for more than 20 years. Su Qingsang was really out of breath in her arms. When she saw the hidden tears in Su Yusin and Old Master Li's eyes, she finally calmed down a little. Mom. She gently patted Li Qianxue's back. Calm down. Li Qianxue shook her head. It was too painful. It was really too painful. What could be more heartbreaking than her own daughter being by her side, but she didn't know it at all. Mom. Su Qingsang thought for a moment and raised her voice a little. I can't breathe. Hearing this, Li Qianxue finally relaxed a little. However, she refused to let her go. Instead, she held her hand tightly. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean to. I'm fine. Su Qingsang looked at Li Qianxue crying like this and felt very sad. If possible, she didn't want to see Li Qianxue like this at all. She raised her hand and gently wiped Li Qianxue's tears. Mom, don't always say sorry. You didn't let me down. Li Qianxue shook her head. She wanted to say that she had let Su Qingsang down for many things. It couldn't be said in a few words. However, Su Qingsang didn't give her a chance. She wiped the tears that had flowed out again very gently. Really? You didn't do me wrong. You know that I've been living a good life. It would have been better if she hadn't said that. Now that she said it, it was like stabbing Li Qianxue's heart with a knife. How can it be good? How was it good? You're my daughter. But I haven't taken care of you for a single day. When Li Qianxue said that, she almost cried again. Su Qingsang was scalded by her tears. Mom, please don't do this. If you act like this, we won't be able to talk properly. Seeing that Li Qianxue was still in a daze, she looked at Old Master Li and the others. Li Qianxue finally came to her senses. She hastily wiped the tears off her face and looked at Su Qingsang. Look at me. Mom is really confused. Li Qianxue held Su Qingsang's hand and walked to Old Master Li. She couldn't hide the sobs in her voice. This is Qingsang. Qingsang is your granddaughter. Li Qianxue couldn't go on. Su Qingsang hurriedly said, Grandpa. She called him very softly. She had always called Old Master Li Old Master since she was a child. Grandpa belonged to Su Yusin and Su Peijian. Hey. Old Master Li's eyes were also wet. He reached out to touch Su Qingsang's cheek, but then lowered his hand. It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back. Yusin. Su Qingsang looked at Su Yusin, although she didn't know how Li Qianxue knew. But she also guessed that it probably had something to do with Su Yusin. Sister. Su Yusin looked at her and took a step forward. Now you are really my sister. My biological sister. Yes. Su Qingsang also wanted to cry. But she held it back. On this side, the family was reunited, and it was harmonious. On the other side, Su Qinghui seemed to be forgotten. He stood aside in a daze, and no one paid attention to him. Hua Ji now watched Su Qingsang acknowledge Li Qianxue and Old Master Li. He let out a long sigh of relief. In fact, it didn't matter to him whether Su Qingsang acknowledged Li Qianxue or not. But he knew that it was different for Su Qingsang. If she didn't know about her past, if she was really just Xiang Caiping's daughter, perhaps she could always be like this and pretend that she didn't know anything. She could be filial to Xiang Caiping like an ordinary daughter. She could peacefully follow Xiang Caiping and keep the mother-daughter relationship for the rest of her life. But Su Qingsang knew. If she didn't acknowledge Li Qianxue, on the surface, she might be able to pretend that she didn't care about anything. She could convince herself not to acknowledge Li Qianxue, but in the end, there would still be regrets. It was good that things were like this. Li Qianxue calmed down and kept holding Su Qingsang's hand. Only then did Su Qingsang realize that something seemed to be wrong. She lowered her head and saw the marks on Li Qianxue's palm. Mom, it's nothing. Li Qianxue was about to take her hand back when Su Yusin said, I thought you went to Rong City on the way here. I was anxious and cut my hand. Don't talk nonsense. Li Qianxue glared at Su Yusin. When she turned to face Su Qingsang, her face was a little cautious. It's nothing. Mom was careless. It has nothing to do with you. Su Qingsang bit her lip and looked at the wound that was no longer bleeding. In her memory, Li Qianxue had always been elegant and calm. It was probably the first time in her life that she had cut her palm like this. Mom, you actually don't have to do this. Rong City is not far from Lin City. I will still come back. You will come back. Yes. Su Qingsang nodded. It was originally planned that I would go back with Hua Jinyao for the holiday. Although she would settle down in Rong City in the future, at this time, she really didn't need to tell Li Qianxue the truth. That means, you will still come back to acknowledge me, right? I will come back to see you. Su Qingsang looked at the expectation in her eyes. I will come back to see you, but if you don't know, I won't acknowledge you. I hope you can be happy. People who were ignorant were always happier. After all, they wouldn't know what happened. Because of her words, Li Qianxue wanted to cry again. She held Su Qingsang's hand tightly and refused to let go. I will only be happy if I acknowledge you. Qing sang, promise me, don't go, okay? Stay with me. Su Qingsang's eyes showed a moment of hesitation. She turned her face to look at Hu Jinyao. They had clearly come to an agreement. They were going back to Rong City together. She didn't go back with him because of Xiang Kaiping. Now, something like this had happened. Hu Jinyao was different from her. As the eldest grandson of the Hu family, he had his responsibilities on his shoulders. If she didn't go back with him, she was afraid. Mom, I'm afraid I can't, Su Qingsang said with difficulty. I promised Hu Jinyao that I would go back with him for the holiday. We didn't go back during the Spring Festival. Now I won't go back during the Lantern Festival. This can't be explained. She had never been a willful person. Naturally, she wanted to take care of everyone. You still want to go? Li Qianxue was anxious. I just acknowledged you. I haven't talked to you properly, it doesn't matter. The first person to speak was Hu Jinyao. Qing sang, since your mother wants you to stay, you can stay. Just stay with her for a while. But, I'll go back to Rong City by myself tomorrow. Hu Jinyao winked at her. Don't worry, I'll arrange everything. Su Qingsang understood what he meant almost instantly. He said that he would arrange everything, which naturally included Xiang Kaiping. Yes. How could she forget Xiang Kaiping? Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang looked anxious. Just like she didn't want to hurt Li Qianxue, she didn't want to hurt Xiang Kaiping either. She knew that she shouldn't do this, but Li Qianxue was innocent. Wasn't Xiang Kaiping innocent too? Don't think about it. Hu Jinyao took a few steps forward and stood beside her. He gently placed his hands on her shoulders. Grandpa is a very open-minded person. He will understand you. He increased the strength of his hands and gave her a look. There was a meaning that only Su Qingsang understood. Su Qingsang's lips moved. But your mother, my mother will understand too. Hu Jinyao looked into her eyes as he spoke. Even if her health hasn't been good recently, an obstetrician like you can't help. Why don't I ask someone to see her? But you can relax and stay with Mom for a few days. As for my mother, I will naturally ask someone to take good care of her. If she asks, I will tell her that you went to the exchange program. Okay. Hu Jinyao thought of everything. Su Qingsang couldn't find the words to say. Then I'll leave tomorrow. The day after tomorrow, I can spend the holiday with Grandpa and the others. As for you, you should stay here for a few days. Su Qingsang's lips were pressed into a straight line. Li Qianxue grabbed her hand at the right time. Look, Hu Jinyao also agreed. Don't go yet. Okay. Su Qingsang didn't object in the end. In fact, deep down, she also wanted to stay. Old Master Li and Su Yusin breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. They had just recognized Su Qingsang. If she left immediately, it was good that Su Qingsang didn't leave. It was good that she didn't leave. Su Yusin also breathed a sigh of relief. He was going to school a long time ago. However, because of Su Qingsang, he hadn't reported to school until now. Li Qianxue only felt that she had 1,000 things to say to Su Qingsang, but when it really came to this, she couldn't say a word. Fortunately, Su Qingsang didn't know what to say either. The mother and daughter had almost no communication for so many years, and they couldn't even find a topic for a while. But there was no need to say anything. For Li Qianxue, as long as she saw Su Qingsang by her side, she would be very happy. Soon, it was evening after this afternoon's commotion. A servant came to say that dinner was ready. There was such a big commotion in the main room just now. But dinner still had to be eaten. Chapter 438. The more Li Qinxue felt guilty and blamed herself for Su Qingsang, the more she hated Su Qinghui. Why are you still here? Get out. You're not welcome in this house now. Su Qinghui stood there without moving. Just now, Su Qingsang and Li Qinxue only cared about getting together. Both Old Master Li and Su Yusin were paying attention to Su Qingsang. No one was paying attention to him. Now that he was reprimanded by Li Qinxue, everyone looked at him. Needless to say, Old Master Li's eyes were full of hatred, just like Li Qinxue's. Although Su Yusin couldn't bear it, he also felt that Su Qinghui had gone too far. He didn't want to talk to him for the time being. Hua Jinyao had been focusing on Su Qingsang, so he couldn't feel any sympathy for Su Qinghui. Su Qingsang finally saw Su Qinghui. In fact, she had been hugged by Li Qinxue as soon as she entered the door. After that, she had no chance to pay attention to her surroundings at all. Now that she saw Su Qinghui, she suddenly felt a little sorry for him. He didn't look like the general manager of Li Group at all. His face was still swollen from Li Qinxue's slap. Old Master Li hit him on the shoulder twice. Although it couldn't be seen, the erection on his shoulders made his shoulders droop. He exuded a dispirited aura. If Li Qinxue had seen Su Qinghui like this in the past, she would have rushed over to him. Right now, her emotions did not fluctuate. There was only indifference, hatred in her eyes. Get out. Li Qinxue hated Su Qinghui to the core. You're not welcome here. Get lost. Su Qinghui looked at Li Qinxue. In his impression, even when she was angry, she was still arrogant. No matter how much she hated him, she couldn't hide the love in her eyes. But now, in her eyes, he could not find the slightest bit of love, only hatred. She hated him. This realization made Su Qinghui very sad. His lips moved, and he looked at Li Qinxue. He had a lot to say, but at this moment, he couldn't say a word. Qinxue. Get out. Li Qinxue pointed at the door. Su Qinghui, if you don't want to lose face, get out yourself. Otherwise, I will have to call the police. The determined look on her face told Su Qinghui that she was telling the truth. If he didn't leave, she might call the police. Su Qinghui closed his eyes. Once upon a time, they were a famous model couple in the business circle, but now, they could only hate each other. Qinxue. He couldn't divorce her. I told you to get lost. Li Qinxue couldn't hide her agitation. She pointed at the door with hatred. Looking at Su Qinghui's face, Su Qingsang felt sorry for him. She didn't know what else to say to Su Qinghui. Mom. I'm hungry. As a bystander, she couldn't forgive Su Qinghui either. His actions had hurt two women. However, Su Qingsang felt that she couldn't just watch Li Qinxue embarrass him again and again in front of his children. He could only change the topic so that Li Qinxue would stop scolding Su Qinghui. Are you hungry? Let's hurry up and eat. As expected, Li Qinxue's attention was immediately diverted. He didn't even look at Su Qinghui. Old Master Li looked at her a few more times because of what she had done. Although this granddaughter of his had never been raised by Li Qinxue, she had a good nature. At a time like this, she could still think of Su Qinghui and use such a method to help him out. Hua Jinyao didn't miss Old Master Li's gaze. He looked at Su Qingsang with a more gentle gaze. Other people didn't know, but he knew it the best. His Qingsang was the kindest. Even though Su Qinghui had done many things to Su Qingsang, she couldn't ignore Su Qinghui's current situation. Let's go. Li Qianxue held Su Qingsang's hand and refused to let go. She led her to the dining room. Looking at the dishes on the table, she found that the servants in the kitchen had made their favorite dishes. Her face suddenly turned cold. Why didn't you make some of Mrs.'s favorite dishes? The servants and the chef looked at each other. There was such a big commotion in the living room, and they couldn't go over to watch. They didn't know what had happened. Hearing Li Qianxue say that out of the blue, they were a little confused. Isn't Miss in the United States? A very low voice sounded. Li Qianxue almost lost her temper again. Su Qingsang quickly pulled her back. Mom! Don't be like this. You'll scare people. They don't know. After Li Qianxue lost her temper, she realized that she seemed to have done something wrong. She shouldn't have asked. She turned her face to look at Su Qingsang. What do you usually like to eat? Only now did she realize that she didn't even know what Su Qingsang liked to eat. This made her voice sound even more guilty and remorseful. Mom, it's okay. You really don't have to do this. She said it casually, but Li Qianxue only felt sad. Her daughter was supposed to be pampered and brought up. But now, she was like a weed. She felt more and more guilty and pulled Su Qingsang to sit next to her. Qingsang, what do you like to eat? Just tell me. I'll ask them to make it for you next time. Okay. At this time, Su Qingsang didn't want to disappoint her, so she nodded faintly and didn't object. Old Master Li and Su Yusin both sat down. Su Chenghui didn't follow in. He was smart. If he really dared to come in, Li Qianxue could guarantee that she would definitely drive him out. Hua Jinyao sat next to Su Qingsang and watched Li Qianxue put food into Su Qingsang's bowl. It wasn't just her. Old Master Li and Su Yusin actually had a lot to say. However, they all knew that Li Qianxue was excited at this time. Compared to her, they were restrained. It wasn't the first time Su Qingsang had eaten with Li Qianxue and the others, but it was the first time she participated as Li Qianxue's daughter. This feeling was very subtle. After a while, her bowl was piled up with food that she couldn't finish. Li Qianxue really wanted to make up for it. She couldn't wait to make up for the blank time in the past between the two of them, even though she knew that such a gap couldn't be made up for in 1 or 2 days. Su Qingsang could understand her feelings, so even though she felt that Li Qianxue's enthusiasm was a little overwhelming, she still smiled and accepted her goodwill. Su Qingsang couldn't eat anymore after she was 70% full, mainly because Old Master Li and Li Qianxue were too exaggerated. Su Qingsang really couldn't stand their enthusiasm. I'm really full. She looked at Hua Jinyao for help. Hua Jinyao was about to help her out when her phone rang at this time. She was stunned for a moment. When she met several pairs of eyes that were looking at her, she took out her phone with great discomfort. Chapter 439. When Hua Jinyao took Su Qingsang away, he only said that he was going to ask when they could fly. But now it was time for dinner, but they were still here and hadn't gone back. Xiang Kaiping waited in Hua Jinyao's villa for a long time, but they didn't come back. She was a little worried. Looking at the number on the phone, Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment. She suddenly felt a little conflicted. At this time, she subconsciously looked at Hua Jinyao. Li Qianxue was sitting next to her and saw the name on the phone at a glance. It was a very simple word. Only one word, Mom. Li Qianxue's heart skipped a beat. She seemed to have just remembered that Su Qingsang had regarded Xiang Kaiping as her mother. Her hand trembled a little, and she almost couldn't control herself from grabbing Su Qingsang's phone. Su Qingsang was very embarrassed. She also knew that Li Qianxue had seen it. But the phone kept ringing. Looking at old Master Li and Su Yusin, she had to answer the phone. Li Qianxue was next to her. She really didn't have the courage to call her mother. Hua Ji now glanced at her and took her phone from her palm. He glanced at the others, stood up, and walked to the side to answer the phone. Su Qingsang felt as if a stone in her heart had been lifted at this moment. She let out a long sigh of relief. When she turned her head, she met Li Qianxue's eyes full of pain. Her heart trembled, and she could hardly keep her face calm anymore. The inexplicable feeling of guilt made it impossible for her to meet Li Qianxue's gaze. On the other end, Hua Ji now glanced over and listened to Xiang Caiping's concerned voice on the other side of the phone. "Qingsang, why haven't you come back for dinner yet?" Xiang Caiping had been accompanied by her daughter and son-in-law. Suddenly, he had to eat dinner alone. It was really lonely. "We have something to do here. Mom, you eat first. We'll come back when we're done." "Okay. Then drive carefully. Be careful when you come back at night. It's still cold. Don't catch a cold." "Okay." Hua Ji now said a few more words in a very soft voice. He hung up. He returned to his seat and returned the phone to Su Qingsang. Li Qianxue watched Su Qingsang take the phone. The phone had been hung up, but she was still sitting there in a daze. Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed, especially when 3 pairs of eyes were staring at her. It didn't feel good at all. She wanted to say something, but words were too weak at this time. Li Qianxue's body was very stiff. She sat there and kept staring at Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang felt very uncomfortable under Li Qianxue's stare. She almost wanted to get up and slip away, but Li Qianxue suddenly stood up and pulled her up. "Let's go. Follow me." "Mom." "Where to?" "Let's go. Let's go talk to her." Su Qingsang paused for a moment, then understood what Li Qianxue meant. She subconsciously wanted to pull her hand out. Li Qianxue suddenly turned around and looked at her. After knowing that her name was Qingsang, she decided to come to find her. "I have investigated everything about Xiang Caiping. I know that she gave birth to a child the day after Christmas that year. I also know that the child was later taken away by Su Qinghui." Qingsang wanted to do a paternity test. But Su Qinghui came to find her. "With him, we are more certain." "Mrs. Su, when you are blaming Qingsang, I also want to tell you something. What Ms. Xiang Caiping has done for Qingsang. More than 20 years ago, Xiang Caiping did abandon her daughter. However, when he thought that Su Qingsang was his daughter, everything he did was motherly. The sweater that Qingsang is wearing now was knitted by her. She got into an argument with Su Peijian to buy a gift for Qingsang and was almost hit by a car. Xiang Caiping is still in a wheelchair." Hua Ji now looked at Li Qianxue's calm expression, and his voice softened a little. Before the new year, Qingsang knew that she was not Xiang Caiping's child. Qingsang was type AB, but Xiang Caiping was type O. Qingsang knew, but because she did not want to hurt Xiang Caiping, she chose to keep her mouth shut. At that time, Qingsang also wanted to question Su Qinghui. But he refused to say. Later, when she found out that her mother was you, she wanted to come to the Su family to see you immediately. But you went to the United States. You heard it clearly. She wanted to see you immediately, but you were not there. She wanted to see you on an impulse. You were not in Lin City, but you gave her time to calm down. You are innocent. What about Xiang Caiping? You flew to the United States for Xiang Caiping's daughter, afraid that she would be lonely in a foreign land. But have you ever thought about it? For the past 20 years, Qing Sang has been alone. Who has ever pitied her when she was lonely? Hua Jinyao's voice was not accusatory. He was just calmly pointing out the truth. But such a truth was even harder to accept than accusation. Li Qianqua's body went limp, and she could barely stand. She collapsed on the dining chair. Only Xiang Kaiping. It was because of her that Qing Sang had motherly love. Xiang Kaiping did not know that Qing Sang was not her child, and she treated Qing Sang with sincerity. If Qing Sang could not wait to meet you as soon as she knew who she was, completely disregarding Xiang Caiping's feelings. Would you want a daughter like that? Would you want to meet her? Li Qianqua's face was pale, and she could not say a word. Not only her, but Su Yusin and Old Master Li also lowered their heads. Yes. Su Qing Sang was the legitimate daughter of the Su family. It would only be good for her to meet them. There was no harm. But even under such circumstances, Su Qing Sang did not want to meet them immediately. She had concerns in her heart. Such concerns were for someone who was actually unrelated to her, but had given her motherly love. Mrs. Su, please forgive me for not being very nice right now. But I still want to say that you are unhappy because Qing Sang called Xiang Kaiping mom for a few months. Then for the past 20 years, Su Peixian has always called you mom. Putting yourself in her shoes, isn't Qing Sang more qualified than you to be unhappy? Li Qianqua could not say a word. She just sat there in a daze. Su Yusin stood next to her. Looking at his mother like this, he could not comfort her even if he wanted to. Su Qing Sang could not help but glare at Hua Jinyao. She knew that he was eloquent. But wasn't it too much to say that to Li Qianqua? Hua Jinyao raised his eyebrows. He did not do it on purpose. If he had to blame someone, he could only blame Su Qinghui. Li Qianqua suddenly leaned on the table and cried herself hoarse. Her heartache, which had already eased, came out uncontrollably again. Su Qingsang's nose began to sting again. She took a few steps forward and squatted down beside Li Qianqua. She reached out and gently held her hand on her knee. Mom. Don't cry. These things. It's not your fault. I have never blamed you. Her eyes were exceptionally clear. Chapter 440. She's really nice to me. For the past few months, she has been accompanying me and taking care of me. So, can you not be angry? If possible, Su Qing Sang really didn't want to hurt Xiang Kaiping. Don't worry. I will definitely make it clear to her. But really, please give me some time. Li Qianqua stopped crying. She did not move from her position on the table. Seeing this, Su Qingsang's emotions were quite complicated. If only she had known about her past a little earlier. Then she wouldn't have so many concerns. Mom. Su Yusin stepped forward and patted Li Qianqua's shoulder. Just listen to your sister. Old Master Li, who had been silent the whole time, let out a long sigh. Qianqua, Qing Sang didn't do anything wrong this time. You should calm down too. If they were in each other's shoes, Su Qing Sang had only called Xiang Kaiping a mom for a few months, and Li Qianqua couldn't stand it. Su Peixian had been calling Li Qianqua mother for more than 20 years. What would Xiang Kaiping do? Li Qianqua knew all of this. But knowing was one thing, and accepting was another. She looked up at Su Qing Sang with tears in her eyes. Yes. You are not wrong. I'm the one at fault. It was always me. If she hadn't forced a relationship that didn't belong to her, if she hadn't seen through Su Qinghui's viciousness, she wouldn't have been separated from her daughter for so many years. Mom. Su Qingsang didn't like the atmosphere. She hugged Li Qianxue and gently patted her back. Don't say any more. You're not wrong either. None of us did anything wrong. That was right. None of them had done anything wrong. Su Qinghui had always been in the wrong. Su Qinghui hadn't left. He stood in the living room, not knowing where else he could go or what else he could do. This was his home. Even if he didn't like it in the beginning, no matter how much he didn't accept it. After more than 20 years, he had gotten used to this family. If Li Qianxue wanted to drive him away, he had a place to go. He just didn't want to leave. It wasn't until he heard the commotion coming from the dining room that he slowly and steadily walked into the dining room like an old man. He didn't go in. He stood at the door and listened to Hu Jinniao and Li Qianxue's conversation. Su Qingsang said that Li Qianxue was not in the wrong. Then it could only be him. Su Qinghui looked as if he had suffered a great blow. Without hesitation, he left the place. He walked quickly. It was as if someone was chasing after him. Except for Hu Jinniao, almost no one noticed that Su Qinghui had appeared and disappeared at the door of the restaurant. Hu Jinniao narrowed his eyes as he watched Su Qinghui leave. Li Qianxue's emotions finally calmed down. She held Su Qingsang's hand and followed her out of the restaurant. The mother and daughter sat down on the sofa. Li Qianxue had a lot to ask Su Qingsang and a lot to tell her. Su Qingsang knew that she was agitated and couldn't be calmed down in a short time. He wanted to change the topic, but he felt that the current mood was not suitable. She pulled out a tissue from the side and wiped Li Qianxue's tears. Mom. Look at you. His eyes were red. Don't cry next time. All right. I won't cry. Li Qianxue wanted to cry again because of her words. However, he did his best to restrain himself. She held Su Qingsang's hand and looked at her daughter. How careless was she? Although Su Qingsang looked like Su Qinghui, the shape of her face was clearly the same as hers. She looked like Su Yusin. She actually didn't think in that direction even once. She was really a careless mother. Old Master Li looked at the mother and daughter in front of him and glanced at Hu Jinniao out of the corner of his eye. Speaking of which, he had some regrets before. Hu Jinniao was such an outstanding young man, but he didn't marry his own granddaughter. Now, that regret was gone. Hu Jinniao married Su Qingsang, but Su Qingsang was his own granddaughter. Old Master Li was not in a hurry to talk to Su Qingsang, but he did have something to say to Hu Jinniao. Jinniao. I heard that you were going back to Rong City. Yes. Hu Jinniao nodded. Qingsang and I have been married for so long, but we haven't been there yet. The headquarters of Tianyu Group was originally in Rong City. But now, I'm afraid Qianxue won't be willing to let Qingsang go. It wasn't easy for them to reconcile. Judging from Li Qianxue's current attitude, there was no way she would let Su Qingsang go to Rong City. Li Qianxue seemed to confirm Old Master Li's words. She grabbed Su Qingsang's hand tightly and said, I won't allow you to go. Even if it's convenient for me to fly to Rong City. But that was someone else's house. I don't want you to go. Mom. Su Qingsang felt a little awkward. He turned to look at Hu Jinniao. Mom, what do you think? Hu Jinniao followed Su Qingsang's advice and called her mother. I'll go back to Rong City for the next few days to take care of some things. As for Qingsang, he would stay at home for the time being. Anyway, she just quit her job in the hospital, so it's fine if she doesn't go. That's good. He happened to be at home with me. Su Qingsang looked at Li Qianxue. At this time, she couldn't say no. She couldn't help but look at Hu Jinniao. She found that she seemed to be used to this action. When she didn't know what to do, Hu Jinyao could always give her strength and calm her down. Qing sang. You can stay here today. Then, I'll go home later. Hu Jinyao knew very well that Li Qianxue wouldn't let Su Qing sang go back today. But Xiang Kaiping was still waiting. She wasn't stupid. Why didn't Su Qing sang go back? Li Qianxue's lips moved. She wanted to say that she didn't need to worry about Xiang Kaiping, but she couldn't say it. In order to divert her attention, Su Qing sang changed the topic. Oh right, Mom, how did you know about this? She did a paternity test and Su Qinghui admitted it himself. But Su Qinghui would never tell Li Qianxue. Yusin told me. Thinking of this, Li Qianxue still felt a lingering fear. If Su Yusin hadn't heard the conversation between Hu Jinyao and Su Qinghui. Su Qingsang didn't want to acknowledge her. When they went to Rome City, he would never know that Su Qingsang was actually his daughter for the rest of his life. She didn't even dare to think about it now. How did Yusin know? Su Qingsang was really curious. Su Yusin didn't hide it. He glanced at Hu Jinyao and told him how he knew about this. Su Qingsang didn't say anything else. Looking at it this way, everything. It was really God's will. She didn't want to acknowledge Li Qianxue, but she still found out. Qingsang, you're back with me now. I don't care what you thought before. I really won't let you leave me again. Li Qianxue felt very insecure now. She needed some assurance, some certainty. Su Qingsang nodded gently. Mom, don't worry. I won't leave you. Even if she went to Rome City, she could come back to see her often. Hearing her promise, Li Qianxue's expression relaxed a little. For a moment, she was a little touched and reached out to hug Su Qingsang tightly. Hu Jinyao didn't stay for long. He played a game of chess with Old Master Li. He got up and said goodbye. Su Qingsang took the opportunity to send him off and followed him out. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang didn't regret acknowledging Li Qianxue. Especially when she saw Li Qianxue like that, she couldn't bear it. However, she still felt uneasy. In fact, if she talked to Xiang Kaiping nicely, it probably wouldn't be a big problem. But just now, everyone had forgotten that there was another person involved in this incident. Su Peijian. Hu Jinyao. As Su Qingsang spoke, she wrapped her arms around Hu Jinyao's waist. Tell me, am I wrong? If she hadn't been persistent in seeking an answer. If she hadn't secretly gone to do a paternity test, Li Qianxue wouldn't have known until now. You're not wrong. Don't think too much. But I already said, you're not wrong. Don't think about it. How could she not think about it? Su Qingsang looked at Hu Jinyao and then at the door behind them. She lowered her head and said softly. There's something I didn't mention just now, but it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. What? Su Peijian. Su Qingsang's expression was very complicated. I'm back. What about Su Peijian? Hu Jinyao frowned. She's not under your control, right? It's not a matter of whether I care or not. Su Qingsang sighed in her heart. I've only been with Auntie for a few months, and we already have such a deep relationship. Su Peijian has been with my mother for more than 20 years. Their relationship must be deeper than ours. You don't like her. You don't want to see her. After all, Su Qingsang and Su Peijian didn't get along. No. Su Qingsang looked at Hu Jinyao. I'm not the kind of person who can't tolerate others. I'm also not the kind of person who has a chicken belly. But Su Peijian is different from me. I'm afraid that when the time comes, she won't be able to accept this fact. She broke my mother's heart. Li Chinchue was so angry now. She even kicked Su Qinghui out. When that time came, she was afraid that she would vent her anger on her. Although Su Peijian had a spoiled personality, in this matter, she was considered innocent. If Li Chinchue really vented her anger on her, Xiang Jingqing suddenly flicked her forehead. He looked at her with a helpless look in his eyes. All right. Don't think about it. These things are not your business, and it's not something you should worry about. According to what I said. Let your mother worry about these things. It's really not your turn to think about these things. But, even if Su Peijian doesn't accept it, she will make trouble for you. Don't you still have me? Hua Jinyao pinched her cheek. I won't watch my wife be bullied. Moreover, it wasn't easy for Li Chinchue to recognize Su Qingsang. How could she allow others to bully her? Even if that person was Su Peijian. What are you thinking? I'm not worried about her bullying me. I'm worried about my mother. Li Chinchue and Su Peijian had been mother and daughter for more than 20 years. Would she really not fall out with Su Peijian because she knew the reason? Chapter 441. That's enough. You don't have to worry about her. As for making your mother happy, it's a very simple thing. You stay and accompany her. She'll be very happy. Hua Jinyao's words made Su Qingsang fall silent. That was the reason, but she still couldn't accept it in her heart. Hua Jinyao. She suddenly took a step closer to him and reached out to hold his hand. Do you think Grandpa won't be unhappy if I don't go back with you? Old Master Hua was a very good person. Su Qingsang didn't want to make him unhappy. Of course not. Don't worry. I'm here. He would definitely be unhappy. After getting married, not only did he not bring her back for the new year, but now he didn't even go back for the festival. Moreover, they had agreed on it before. Now, Lu Tongjia and Ho Mingguang would probably be unhappy. Su Qingsang couldn't completely relax, but Hua Jinyao's repeated promises made her less worried. Hua Jinyao looked at her and couldn't help but rub the top of her head again. You're still a doctor. You're so worried. All right. I'm here for everything. Okay. Su Qingsang nodded heavily. Well, remember to tell her when you go back. They all knew who she was. Hua Jinyao resisted the urge to flick her again. Oh, you, can you not worry about these things? Su Qingsang didn't say anything. She just thought a little too much. Don't worry. I'll leave the story for you to tell. Today, I'll say that there's a problem with a patient in the hospital. I need you to keep an eye on him. Is that okay? Su Qingsang wasn't sure if Xiang Kaiping would believe her. However, this excuse was the best way to go about it. Thank you. Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao leaned over and kissed her on the lips. It's okay. I'll keep the gift for later. Su Qingsang blushed. Being disturbed by Hua Jinyao like that seemed to have dissipated all of a sudden. After sending Hua Jinyao off, Su Qingsang turned around and walked back, only to find that Li Chinchue had been standing at the door, looking at her from afar. After seeing her turn around, she looked embarrassed and at ease. Su Qingsang had never seen Li Chinchue like that. Feeling a little sour, his footsteps quickened. Mom, it's windy outside. What are you doing out here? I'm fine. I just want to see you. Su Qingsang's eyes were a little wet, but she suppressed that feeling. She stepped forward and hooked her arm around Li Chinchue's. Mom, you might as well look at yourself instead of me. You're much prettier than me. Li Chinchue's mood finally improved because of Su Qingsang's words. Who said that? My daughter is the prettiest. Old Master Li had been waiting in the living room. In fact, he and Su Yusin had the same worries as Li Qianxue. He was afraid that Su Qingsang would run away. Now that she had not left, Old Master Li's Su Yusin breathed a sigh of relief. Li Qianxue was actually very tired. It had been a long-distance flight of more than 10 hours, and after getting off the plane, he had experienced such an emotional roller coaster. She was tired and sleepy, but she could not bear to go to sleep. After exchanging a few words with her, Su Qingsang noticed that Li Qianxue was exhausted. She couldn't bear it. Mom, go rest. I promise I'll still be here when you wake up. Then you sleep with me tonight. Li Qianxue grabbed her hand. Just sleep with Mom, okay? Su Qingsang couldn't refuse, so she finally nodded. Okay. Li Qianxue was satisfied, thinking that she hadn't come back to stay before. She called the servants and asked them to go upstairs and change all the bed sheets. Old Master Li was old and couldn't afford to be tossed around. Indeed, Su Qingsang went upstairs to rest after not leaving. The mother and daughter went upstairs. Su Qingsang had a room here before, so naturally, there were clothes there. When Li Qianxue went to take a shower, Su Qingsang went back to her room to find her clothes. The servants cleaned regularly, so the things in the room were still there. Su Qingsang looked at all of this and actually felt a little emotional. She picked out a set of pajamas and returned to Li Qianxue's room. She had already taken a shower, and it seemed that she had taken a quick shower. It was as if she was afraid that she would run away. Li Qianxue's lack of security made Su Qingsang feel helpless. She took her pajamas and was about to go into the bathroom. Just like her, she wanted to get it done quickly. Li Qianxue's phone rang at this moment. The two of them looked at each other. Li Qianxue glanced at the screen, and her expression suddenly changed. Su Qingsang also saw it. It was Su Peixian's call. Li Qianxue didn't answer the phone. Previously, she was completely immersed in the matter of recognizing her daughter. Now that she had calmed down, she also thought of Su Peixian. It was a fact that Su Peixian wasn't her daughter. But no matter how much she hated Su Qinghui, she had raised Su Peixian for more than 20 years. If she was asked to treat Su Peixian coldly, she couldn't do it. But if she was asked to pretend that nothing had happened and continue to be Su Peixian's mother and daughter, she couldn't do it. Li Qianxue looked at the number now and hated Su Qinghui even more. Mom. You'd better answer it. Su Qingsang actually sympathized with Su Peixian. She didn't dare to think about how Su Peixian would react if she knew. Li Qianxue looked at her, picked up the phone, and picked up. Mom. When Su Peixian returned to her apartment, Su Yusin told Li Qianxue to ask Su Qinghui if he agreed to let her come back. But now, so much time had passed. She didn't receive a call from Su Yusin or Li Qianxue. Su Peixian had been alone in the United States. Even though Li Qianxue had hired someone to take care of her, she had had enough. Now that she had returned to her apartment, even though she had returned to China, she was still alone. What was the difference between this and letting her stay abroad? After the nanny made dinner for her that night, she had been waiting for Li Qianxue's call. After waiting for a while, he called Li Qianxue. What did Dad say? Does he agree to let me come back? Li Qianxue did not say anything. In fact, at this point, she really didn't know how to get along with Su Peixian. Li Qianxue didn't even want to respond to her calling her Mom. Mom. Did Dad disagree? Su Peixian's voice was suddenly full of sadness. Dad, why are you like this? It's been so long, and you still haven't calmed down. Li Qianxue didn't want to listen anymore. She suddenly remembered why Su Qinghui had sent Su Peijian away. If not for Su Peijian, Xiang Kaiping would not have been injured. Su Qingsang would not have pity for Xiang Kaiping. Your dad hasn't calmed down yet. You should stay here for a while. When he calms down, naturally, he will let you come back. Li Qianchue's voice was a little cold. Su Peijian was stunned. Mom. That's it. I'm tired today. I want to rest first. Mom. Su Peijian's voice was a little worried. Did you quarrel with Dad? Don't quarrel with Dad. If he doesn't want me to come back, I won't come back. Don't quarrel with Dad because of me. Her parents didn't have a good relationship to begin with. If they quarreled every 3 days, there would be a big quarrel every 5 days. Their relationship would probably become even worse. If that woman, Xiang Kaiping, provoked again, perhaps Su Qinghui's heart would be even more biased toward her. Because of Su Peijian's words, Li Qianxue couldn't continue to harden her heart. Su Qingsang had a mother-daughter relationship with Xiang Kaiping. How could Su Peijian not have feelings for her? I know. You should rest. I'm tired too. I'll sleep first. She was afraid that she would expose herself. Li Qianxue quickly hung up the phone. When she turned to face Su Qingsang, she felt uncomfortable again. Qingsang, will you be angry? Why would I be angry? Your sister, Su Peijian. Su Qingsang and Su Peijian's identities had been swapped. Su Qingsang was no longer Su Peijian's sister. Instead, she was her sister. After all, she has been by my side for more than 20 years. She wanted to tell her Su Peijian's background directly. However, she couldn't say it out loud. Mom. I know everything. Don't explain. Feelings weren't born. They were born together. Su Qingsang knew this very well. I'm going to take a shower. Mom, you sleep first. When Su Qingsang came out of the bathroom, only a small bedside lamp was left in the room. Li Qianxue's eyes were closed, as if she had fallen asleep. She walked to the bed quietly. Su Qingsang lay down very gently, as if she was not afraid of waking her up. Unexpectedly, Li Qianxue wasn't in a deep sleep at all. As soon as she heard her movements, she woke up and opened her eyes to look at her. Are you done? Mom. Go to sleep. Su Qingsang looked at her and really felt sorry for her. I'm here. I won't run away. Li Qianxue blinked. I know you won't run away. I will, she was just a little worried. Su Qingsang held her hand. Then I'll hold your hand to sleep tonight. Okay. Li Qianxue held her hand tightly. She held it a little tightly, but Su Qingsang didn't break free. Qingsang. Li Qianxue looked at her. She couldn't get enough of her. She was clearly very sleepy, but she still wanted to say a few more words to her. It's been hard on you in the past few years. It's not hard. Su Qingsang shook her head. Mom, don't think like that. I should have treated you better. Li Qianxue really regretted it. I really should have treated you better. If that was the case, she wouldn't be as regretful, self-blaming, and upset as she was now. Her heart ached when she thought of the missed time. Mom. Don't think like that. I'm really good. How could she be good? Li Qianxue thought about how Su Qingsang had been at home before she was 18. Can you tell me about you? Anything is fine. Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed. She really didn't know what to say. Just tell me why you became a doctor. Why did Su Qingsang become a doctor? because she couldn't understand why there would be women who didn't want their children. Therefore, she chose to become an obstetrician and gynecologist. She wanted to meet more pregnant women. She wanted to know what these mothers were thinking. But she couldn't say this to Li Qinxue. If she said it, she would feel bad again. Mom, I'll tell you something about me in medical school. We first learned theory in our freshman year. Then, Su Qingsang skipped the question just now and didn't answer, but Li Qinxue could keenly sense that she must be hiding something. If she didn't want to say it, she wouldn't ask. However, she still felt a little regretful. Her daughter wasn't close to her now. If she wanted Su Qingsang to completely believe and accept her, it wouldn't be a matter of a day or two. Su Qingsang's voice was very pleasant. At least, Li Qinxue was fascinated by it. She listened to her talk about the interesting things about going to college and how she felt when she took her first anatomy class. Those lost times were becoming clear bit by bit through this way. Li Qinxue was really too sleepy. After forcing herself to listen for more than half an hour, she finally fell asleep. After Li Qinxue fell asleep, Su Qingsang could finally take a breather. In fact, she was also tired. Looking at Li Qinxue, she gently moved her body closer to her. This feeling was quite wonderful. It was completely different from the feeling when she slept with Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao gave her security, peace of mind, and a thick warmth. But Li Qinxue gave her a different feeling. She couldn't tell, but this feeling was wonderful. Li Qinxue had a faint fragrance on her body. Her body was very soft and warm. Su Qingsang carefully moved her face closer to Su Qingsang's shoulder. She felt the temperature of Li Qinxue's body. This was the warmth that belonged to a mother. Su Qingsang closed her eyes, curled up the corners of her lips, and slowly fell asleep. Li Qinxue was extremely tired yesterday, but she woke up early in the morning. The excitement of the first day was too great. She had a dream that night. From the first time she met Su Qinghui to giving birth to his child. And then there was everything that happened yesterday. She dreamed that she couldn't make Su Qingsang stay. She still got on the plane to Rong City. No matter how she called, Su Qingsang refused to look back. She was scared awake by that dream. When she opened her eyes, she saw Su Qingsang sleeping next to her. Her daughter's steady breathing and rosy cheeks from a night's sleep were reminding her that she was just dreaming. As long as it was a dream. Li Qinxue's hands and feet were still a little weak. She looked at Su Qingsang's side profile. Looking at her like this, she could feel that her facial features were more similar to her. This was her daughter. Her biological daughter. Her real daughter. She looked at Su Qingsang's face leaning against her shoulder, and her hand was still holding hers. She felt like a little baby snuggling up to her parents. She had been sleeping in separate rooms with Su Qinghui for a long time. When she went to the United States, she also shared a room with Su Peijian. It had been a long, long time since she had slept in the same bed with someone. She couldn't help but raise her hand and pinch Su Qingsang's cheek. The warm touch reminded her that Su Qingsang was real. It wasn't a dream. Her daughter was now sleeping in the same bed with her. Hua Jinyao, stop it. Su Qingsang was disturbed by her movements. She thought that Hua Jinyao was beside her, so she muttered. She didn't wake up. Instead, she frowned and fell asleep again. Li Qinxue was stunned by her words. She seemed to have just remembered that Su Qingsang was already married. Hua Jinyao. Li Qinxue had never liked him before. All the things he did to protect Su Qingsang made her feel a little uncomfortable. Chapter 442. Although she had to be grateful to Hua Jinyao for all the things that had happened before, at least when she didn't know, he protected Su Qingsang again and again. These actions made her feel uncomfortable at the time, and she was grateful now. However, no matter how grateful she was, she couldn't hide the fact that Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang's marriage was too casual. She didn't know it before, but now she knew. She was quite dissatisfied. Hu Jinyao had married her daughter so casually. Now he was taking Su Qingsang back to Rome City to develop. She didn't have enough love for her daughter. How could she let Hu Jinyao take her to Rome City so easily? No matter what, she should make things difficult for him, shouldn't she? There was a knock on the door, and Su Yusin's voice sounded outside. "Mom, are you up? It's time for dinner." "Coming." Li Qianxue quickly got up and quietly walked to the door to open it. "I'll come down later. Don't disturb your sister. Let her sleep a little longer." "Mom, could it be that you guys didn't sleep the whole night because of the candlelight talk?" Su Yusin didn't want to be the bad guy. However, old Master Li woke up early. Li Qianxue had been with Su Qingsang for the whole night, but old Master Li hadn't woken up yet. Old Master Li also missed his granddaughter. If he didn't know before, it would have been fine. Now that he knew, he wanted to make up for the past 20 years. "Let your sister sleep." Li Qianxue didn't want to wake her daughter up so early. They talked until late last night. "Mom, I'm awake." Su Qingsang woke up while they were talking and sat up. She blinked sleepily. Her long hair was a little messy, and she habitually rubbed her eyes, looking like she wasn't fully awake. Li Qianxue's heart softened. She turned to look at her. "Why don't you sleep a little longer? It's all Yusin's fault for waking you up." "It's okay. I usually get up early." Su Qingsang was completely awake now. "Mom, if you're sleepy, you can sleep a little longer." "I'm not sleepy." Li Qianxue was also sleepy. She wanted to spend more time with her daughter, so how could she be sleepy? Su Yusin looked at the two of them, shook his head, and turned to go downstairs. Soon, Li Qianxue and Su Qingsang came downstairs. Su Qingsang was wearing the clothes that Li Qianxue had bought for her. That was originally prepared for Su Peixian. Now that Su Qingsang put it on, standing next to Li Qianxue, they looked like a pair of sisters. Su Yusin stood up. Old Master Li looked at the two people in front of him. He didn't find it strange at all. It was as if Su Qingsang was supposed to be in this house. "Let's go and have breakfast first." The group moved to the dining room, and Old Master Li sat down. Li Qianxue and Su Qingsang sat on either side of him. Su Yusin sat on the other side of Su Qingsang. Breakfast was sumptuous. Yesterday, the servants at home had been instructed to prepare the dishes according to Su Qingsang's preferences. However, after so many years, he still didn't know what Su Qingsang liked to eat. He simply made a big table. "Qingsang, what do you want to eat?" Li Qianxue was there again. This time, she wanted to give all her motherly love to Su Qingsang. "Mom, I'm really not a picky eater." Su Qingsang was afraid of her. "If you do this, I won't dare to eat at home anymore." Then, Mom, it's fine as usual." Su Qingsang's words made Li Qianxue feel more at ease. The more Old Master Li looked at Su Qingsang, the more he liked her. She was not arrogant, not willful, and had a sense of propriety. She also knew when to advance and when to retreat. "Qianxue, I want to hold a banquet." Halfway through the meal, Old Master Li suddenly put down his chopsticks. He looked at the other three people. "We didn't know before, but now that we know, we naturally have to restore Su Qingsang's original identity." "That's good." Li Qianxue fully supported it. Invite all the people in the business circle of Lin City. I want them to know who the young lady of the Su family is. There's no need for that, is there? Su Qingsang looked at the two people and looked a little uncomfortable. It's fine as it is now. There's no need for a banquet, right? Of course there is. And it's a big one. Old Masterly wanted to tell the world. I want to clear your name, and I've prepared a gift for you. Grandpa. Su Qingsang couldn't sit still anymore. She put down the chopsticks in her hand. Grandpa, Mom. I thank you. I understand how you feel. But there's one thing I have to say. She lowered her eyes and looked a little embarrassed. I'm very grateful that you're willing to acknowledge me. But I think we can forget about the banquet. My father. No matter what, he's still my father. It was indeed his fault for doing this back then. But now that the mistake has been made, the situation is already like this. Then we can only face it. If you acknowledge me with great fanfare, I'll become the young lady of the Su family. Then, what about Su Peijian? As soon as the name Su Peijian came out, the other three people were silent. Even if Su Peijian wasn't Li Qianque's daughter. But for more than 20 years, she had grown up under their love. This matter was Su Qinghui's fault, and it had nothing to do with Su Peijian. But if old Master Li acknowledged her with great fanfare, what would Su Qinghui do? Mom. I'm not soft-hearted, and I'm not a saint. It's enough for our own family to know about this. Most importantly, for Su Qinghui. No matter what, Su Qinghui was her father. He was her biological father. Although she also felt that what Su Qinghui had done was too much. But blood ties couldn't be cut. She couldn't destroy Su Qinghui just because Su Qinghui had replaced her and changed her identity. If people knew that Su Qinghui had planned such a vicious plot many years ago, how could Su Qinghui gain a foothold in Lin City in the future? Now old Master Li wanted to kick him out, and Li Qianxue wanted to divorce him. Su Yusin blamed Su Qinghui, and Xiang Kaiping hated him. When Su Peijian found out, she would probably blame Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui, who had been betrayed by his family, would have to face the strange eyes of those people in Lin City. Su Qingsang couldn't bear to think about it. What happened had already happened. There was no point in looking into it again. She didn't want to ruin the last bit of Su Qinghui's reputation. After his divorce with Li Qianxue, his reputation would be affected. That could be considered a punishment, right? But, Li Qianxue looked at Su Qingsang's face and only felt anxious. But if that's the case, it's too unfair for you. It's not unfair. Su Qingsang blinked. Mom, if you really think I'm unfair, then be nice to me in the future. Li Qianxue didn't speak. She felt sad. This was her daughter. She couldn't even tell others that this was her daughter. Then, even if you don't want us to hold a banquet, at least let me ask our family to come over for a meal. Let's get to know each other. Su Qingsang couldn't refuse this request. She nodded. Okay. Then it's just a meal. There's no need to pick a time. Let's do it tomorrow. Old Master Li waved his hand. Tomorrow is not the Lantern Festival. Let them come together for the festival and get to know each other. Su Qingsang didn't object this time. She couldn't object. Mom. If our relatives and friends come over tomorrow, we can just say that we gave birth to a child in the same hospital that was accidentally switched. Su Yusin suddenly spoke, which made Su Qingsang look at him. She had forgotten before that there could be such a story. However, she quickly realized that those who could survive in the business world of Lin City were all shrewd people. Even if this story was tenable for a while, unless Li Qianxue could maintain the original husband and wife relationship with Su Qinghui. Otherwise, Li Qianxue would insist on divorcing Su Qinghui as soon as she found out that the baby had been switched. No matter how she looked at it, this matter seemed to be a conspiracy. Old Master Li was angry when he talked about this matter. We have to say this, and they have to be willing to believe it. Whether they believe it or not is their business, whether they say it or not is our business. No matter what, we can still show our attitude. Like Su Qingsang, Su Yusin didn't want Su Qinghui to end up too badly. No matter what, he was still their father. Li Qianxue's face was cold and she didn't speak. She was not only disappointed in Su Qinghui now. There was resentment, hatred, pain, and regret. After dinner, I will contact Lawyer Qin. Li Qianxue looked at Su Yusin as she spoke. Yusin, you are not 18 yet, but you will be soon. Qingsang is already an adult, and your future life has nothing to do with your father. I want to divorce him. Old Master Li had no objection. Don't give him a cent of the company's shares. I want him to leave the family with nothing. Dad. This kind of thing goes without saying. I said it. I will give him what he wants. No matter what, he has worked hard for the Li Group to make a lot of money for the past 20 years. When Li Qianxue said this, there was obvious hatred in her eyes. Just think of it as spending money to buy out the past with him. Qianxue, that's it. Li Qianxue thought for a moment. I will call Lawyer Qin over later. Ask him to send the divorce agreement over today. Su Yusin and Su Qingsang looked at each other. They both knew that they were powerless to stop this matter. Mom. Su Qingsang's lips moved. She wanted to say something, but Li Qianxue seemed to be able to understand her thoughts. Qingsang, you don't have to persuade me about this matter. I have already decided. I have been let down by him all my life. I used to think that if I treated him well, he would understand it forever. Now it seems that it is impossible. Since you know that you are my daughter, you should know how vicious his intentions are. He wants to give the Li Group in the end. Li Qianxue couldn't continue. Anyway, don't persuade me. Su Qingsang nodded and didn't say anything else that would make Li Qianxue unhappy. Okay, I support you. Su Yusin was on the side, unable to stop his parents from divorcing. He could only be glad that they were all grown up now. Su Qingsang didn't expect Li Qianxue to act so quickly. Not long after dinner, she called Lawyer Qin over. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.